so big? Hang on. There we go. Let's go with that. That'll do. There we are. How is everyone? Just get everything prepped. All right. There's two things in the itinerary tonight. We're going through the Andrew Wilson versus Destiny and also Ariadne panel, largely just because it's funny. And then we're going to go over... Where are you? There. Some person called Fredda, who I've never seen before, but is apparently getting a ton of views for it, made a video critique of Kraut using liberal political theory instead of history, so I have to watch that one. Sort of as a matter of course. Thank you, Average Citizen, for the return membership. Appreciated. So that's tonight. Okay. All right. That's there. That's there. I make myself smaller to demonstrate my superior self-esteem. Boom. And okay. Oh dear God, this is 4 hours long. We're not going to go through the whole thing. Boom. Actually, we'll put you down here. Then, pop this out. EU liberal political theory, but it's a critique of liberal political theory, so that's different. That's better. Okay, let's mute this. Or turn the volume way down. Okay. And let's... Oh, you know what we need to do? I need to use the right screen one. There we go. There we go. Sweet. That works. Okay. Okay. Boom.
What's up, everybody? Can you hear me all right?
Unfortunately.
Hopefully you can hear me okay. May sound a little bit quiet.
It is raining. The AC is raining. That is wrong. Okay.
Just so you know, I'm live right now.
What's that?
Yeah. They can't hear you. You're muted on that end.
It's fine. It's just condensation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can hear you fine. I've been good. So is this thing going to start on time?
Okay, let's jump ahead. This is taking too long.
All right. Well, just throw me in the background till other people come in.
Okay. I think this is where we want to be. Right about here. Okay. What on earth is that membership window he's got? It's like a
What's up, guys?
smoking.
We are live, and we're going to be starting completely on time today, something that I thought would never, ever happen. We got an epic lineup for you today. We got Andrew from The Crucible. He's been on this channel a million times. Not So Erudite, i.e. Kyler, who's also been on here a million times. Grace has been on here a few times, and Destiny's been on here quite a lot, too. So you guys, these are all people I don't think require any kind of introduction. Now, the format of this debate is going to be this. We're going to be talking about two topics. We're going to have about 45 minutes to an hour for each topic to debate. That'll be just based on how I think engaging the topic is. You know, if you guys are firing it out pretty quickly, then we can move on to the second one. The two topics at hand are this. The first one is, why has women's happiness declined so much in recent years, and what is the solution? The second one is, should men treat women as equals? These are very manosphere topics. This can go in any direction. I'm not going to limit people to just talking about these things.
Finally, someone's asking the important questions.
Like starts talking about religion or politics, that's in a way that's not related, then I'll probably circle back. I generally will not talk that much during this debate. I will not be debating. I will just be moderating. It's going to be pretty free-flowing. I will only step in if one person's getting cut off like over and over and over again, or someone's really, really derailing. Also, I will give each one of you guys 2 to 3 minutes to an opening statement so you can talk about this issue, and then it's just going to be free form. So without the way, let's just get started. We'll go in categorical order. Let's start with you, Andrew.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of make something clear from the outset, because people might get the wrong idea that this is a 2v2 debate, because Destiny and Erudite will probably agree on most things. Me and Grace basically agree on nothing, and she's not on my team, and I'm not doing a team debate with Grace. Essentially, she sucks in every category and can't debate worth a shit, so she's not on my team. I just wanted to make that clear right from the outset. I didn't want there to be any confusion about that at all. So over to the topic. We're starting with which topic do women? What's the topic, Alex? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I get it right.
Why has women's happiness declined so much in recent years, and what's the solution? And just to quickly, because some people are saying, well, men's happiness has declined as well. Yes, but there's been a kind of for a while, men were.
So their topic, just for clarification, is should women be equal to men? This is the massive panel topic. So, just so you know. I'm audible, yes.
Less happy on women than average, and you've seen the female happiness decline more rapidly than male happiness, and now to the point women on average are less happy than men. So the question is really, why is women's happiness declining more significantly than men's happiness?
Well, it's a combination problem. So I would say that a big indicator is social issues. The biggest social issues being a lack of family and a lack of pregnancy and a lack of children. I think that children is a pinnacle part of women's happiness. We see that the birth rate is on a massive decline and has been on a massive decline for the entirety of my lifetime. And before that, it's actually been on decline
imaginations are sterile places
since about 1800, but it's not really dipped below replacement levels. So I would say that it's a lack of family element and the social dynamic that comes with the family element. That is one of the primary causes for the increase in mental illness in women specifically, though I think there's more factors than that. I would point to that first as being a good indicator.
All right, cool. Let's move on to Kyla.
Yeah, it sounds like in general, it looks like it's not just women's happiness that's decreasing. It looks like people's happiness across the board in like particularly wealthy countries is decreasing. And so like the factors that are contributing to both of these things is probably super complex. Probably most of the factors are non-gendered. And depending on the study that you're looking at, there's going to be different takes on whether they're like what happiness is measured, and like women are experiencing higher levels of like mental health than men are, but they're also experiencing like greater levels of like life satisfaction. So it's a really, really complicated picture. I don't think it's as simple as like women are just less happy right now than ever before.
Let me just quickly, I do agree there's multiple research on this. Just for the audience, let me pull up like a little chart that I think can kind of give some sense to this. So this is talking about life satisfaction in the United States, according to a poll, and you can see that it's gone down for both genders, right? But something interesting happened at, I guess in like the early 90s, women's happiness dropped off lower than men's, and now they're both rebounding a little bit. Although if we go to 2023, it's actually been going down again. But basically, for the last 20 years or so, women have been on average, according to a lot of polls, less happy than men. But yeah, I mean, you could also disagree with the premise, for example. It's also an option too. All right, let's go to Destiny.
Yeah, I feel like happiness is an issue that we're all kind of dealing with right now. I think the internet has dramatically changed the way we engage with the world. I think that making it like ultra gendered, I think misses kind of what's actually happening. And I don't know if it's like an empirical fact that people that have families are happier because they had families and they wouldn't have been happier otherwise. That idea seems to be pushed a lot by kind of trad people that like, oh, if we all just went back to some lifestyle that we're never going back to, would suddenly fix like all of society's ills. And I don't think that would be true for almost anything, especially any particular person's happiness.
Cool. All right, Grace, you're up.
If you want to see why women are unhappy, you have to admit to the fact that women are contingent on men. And if you, for example, we as women are afforded as partners,
Women are contingent on men. So Ambrose, just to be clear, so this is the argument. This is the thing you're missing. So you're not familiar with Grace Thorpe, thank God. The thing about women's happiness is that women are, and I quote, contingent on men. Do not ask such questions of a Thorpe.
You have Andrew sitting in an office building of some sort. I don't know if that's his green screen. Terrified of a 20-year-old girl married to a extremely masculine woman who shoots guns and lifts weights and is a fake traditional guy. Then you have guys like Destiny, the liberal cuck who is fine with his woman fucking other men. If this is the pinnacle of partners that are available to women these days, and women are contingent on men for support and guidance, I don't see why we wouldn't be unhappy. You also have female role models like Kyla, who has a pet for a husband and is extremely masculine and aggressive.
Yeah, but
That's
you
the
fuck your
female
dad,
role model.
so...
This debate is
You're a Christian. You're a Christian. That's slander. That's slander.
Just say it.
You said yourself to me in DMs that you didn't believe any
Yeah,
of
but
that,
if you're going to
so
make the debate about
I would
ad
just say
homs,
that.
if you're going to make the debate about ad homs and you're going to derail the whole thing so we can't even have a conversation, then just leave. You're just worthless. You're worthless to the whole debate.
It's not an ad hominem. It's an example. You are an example.
Yeah, I'm not. I
of
don't give a
failure
fuck
of
about
man.
Destiny's sex life. I'm here to debate some issues. That's what I want to do.
Mhm.
Okay, despite everything, Andrew's growing on me quite a bit. Quite a bit here.
You are an example of why women are unhappy. You're an
sorry.
awful
What are you
person.
Oh
What
yeah,
are
the
you
married
looking
man
at?
with 5 kids. I get it.
I'm
Yes.
allowed?
Yeah.
Yes. You are fake
Versus the
traditional
20-year-old
man.
who
Let me live.
faked an incest scandal. Right. You're the pinnacle of morality. Unreal.
Both you and Destiny are terrified of me, a 20-year-old girl, and you both said that you would never speak to us or platform.
You remember
us
that last
publicly
time we
again.
debated and you sent me a message saying that you got your ass kicked? Because that's about to happen again.
Okay, go ahead. You're an example of what awful men are available to women these days. You're the traditional side of it. Both of you suck.
Okay, Destiny, you want to respond to that?
I don't know how to talk to a 20-year-old's evaluation of my life or my relationships. I don't even know where I would begin to like
Defend your
can't think of-
marriage, Destiny.
I can't
Come
think
on,
of
let's
somebody whose opinion I would care less about. Like, this chick started smoking at 16 and is like the replacement mom for her family with an abusive father. I don't know what I'm supposed to take in terms of.
I know a human being can't, by definition. Well, I mean, human beings can be contingent a little bit. They're contingent on like physical extension, right?
There's foundational conditions that have to be in place in order for a human to flourish, but humans aren't a contingent.
But their existence is contingent, and you can sort of say offhandedly.
That is not the same as a human. That is the human's existence.
But you can refer to like a human as like we even refer to quote unquote human beings, right? That's sort of baked into there, kind of etymologically,
Not really.
linguistically. What's the word I'm looking for?
Semantically.
That one.
Yeah, no, that's. You can say existence is contingent on on certain foundational factors, but you can't say that a human being qua human being is contingent on anything.
I'm too tired for this.
So
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that she thinks that men in life suck when her primary father figure is also her like boyfriend / like abuser. So,
I didn't mention him. I think he's a great guy.
of course you do.
Yeah. You let your wife fuck other men. Are you an example of somebody who should be trusted, who women should trust?
I mean, you let your dad fuck other women, so.
My dad has nothing to do with it. Why are you so obsessed with him? My dad has nothing to do with it. You notice how I didn't bring him up and both of you bring him up?
Stop. It was fun in the beginning. I do want to bring it back on track. I do enjoy the petty ad hominem battles, but let's bring it back on track to the initial topic.
Cool. Can we start with getting an argument from Grace?
That is my argument, that men like you are the people debating for or against what women need when you clearly have no idea. You're incompetent losers. That's
Why is Alex... Why is playing with fire bring these people, her in particular, onto all these? Like, I had to deal with her last time, and she's insufferable. Just has nothing to offer. I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, if it's someone like Brittany Simons, I understand, because she's capable of carrying on a conversation, but Grace is actually impossible.
That's my argument.
Based.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, you haven't made an argument, Grace.
Look at yourself, Andrew. That's my argument.
That's your argument,
You're
Grace?
obviously deeply unhappy.
Your argument is
You-
look at yourself because you're
Yes,
obviously
yes.
deeply unhappy.
Look at yourself. You have a green screen. You chose to be like in an office basement. Or if that's really where you are, that's incredibly
That's
depressing.
My
You are
my
a
block
fake
stick
man. You
house.
talk about
What?
homosexuality constantly.
Uh-huh.
You're aggressive and rude. You smoke and drink like a fish.
Yeah.
What's like?
Wait,
yeah.
are fish
Take a look in
smoking
the
and
mirror.
Is that true?
There's a lot of fish that are like known for like their nicotine intake.
I mean, I definitely smoke and drink. That's true. That's like what every
Like
good. That's what
crawfish.
every good Orthodox Christian does. Grace, you didn't know that? And by the way, that's
She
what
does,
good
because her dad
That's
smokes
what
and drinks
good
as well, right?
Catholics do too, Grace. Like your dad,
Don't
who
you
smokes
chain
and
smoke?
drinks.
Wait, don't you smoke, Grace?
Yes.
Yeah.
It does. And drinks.
Why are we talking about any of this?
So what?
So what's your
He's a
argument?
grown
Can you
man.
give us an argument that's not like because you guys are bad, because Destiny and Andrew evil? Can you give us an argument external to that, or no? Is your whole argument no? Okay.
You have no right to speak on this. You have no idea what makes women happy. You're an insecure fake
Okay.
male, and so is Destiny.
Look, whatever else can be said about Andrew Wilson, he's like a well-off father of 5. I know because I accidentally called his wife a parasite on Twitter recently. That was a thing. I mean, touche, though. He's got a green screen, so.
You're both terrified of me. Why should I trust two men who said they're terrified of me and avoid me on every
The smell.
platform they go? And Destiny tells other
sorry.
people they can't interact with
They're
me or
not
he's
mine.
going to ban them. I'm supposed to respect that as a man? As a man, I'm 20 years old.
Well, to be fair,
From
Destiny.
either of you? From either of you? What did I ever do? What did I ever do?
To be fair, both Destiny and Andrew agreed to come on this panel. knowing
Well,
we were gonna
well,
be here.
well,
There was
like
no
let's
surprise.
see, let's
Yeah,
see.
they finally show their scared little
Why wouldn't we
I just
want to?
gotta
Why
say,
wouldn't we want to
erudite-
platform a
erudite
person
up
who
good, okay?
derails
Men
derails
done that.
every single debate and conversation into her own petty family drama? Why would anybody not want to do that when we're
I'm not
here
the one
for
who
a debate
derailed it.
panel?
You
Why would we
derailed
not
it.
want to
You
do
derailed
that?
it. You derailed it.
You
You
didn't
talked
come on.
about it. I didn't.
You have not made a single argument, Grace, because you're too stupid. You're literally not smart enough to
I
make
made
an
an
argument. No, that's
I
not
made
an
an
argument. What's the
Look at the two
argument?
of
The
you.
argument is you bad.
You guys have been online for years. You're terrified of a 20-year-old girl and her dad.
I haven't
and
even
you
been
come up with
online for 2 years, Grace.
ridiculous-
Grace,
come
I
up
haven't
with
even been
ridiculous
online for 2
lies.
years. I haven't
Come up
even
with
been
ridiculous
online for 2
lies.
years, Grace.
Is he really not? I thought Big Papa Fascist was on for a long time. Maybe it's just been a slow year.
You just making
Well, would
shit
either-
up because you're an idiot.
Sorry I'm not saying much to this. There's really nothing to say to it. It's just... Ugh.
Would either of you debate my dad? No, you're total pussies.
I already
I'll debate your dad.
barely-
debated your
you
dad, and so
barely
did
get-
Destiny.
you bar-
Wait,
you
Destiny
barely
and
get-
me, and Not
You
So Erudite, all
barely-
3 of us
Yeah,
debated
and
your
then-
dad.
And then you all said you can never interact with him again. Don't you notice a pattern here? Don't
Yeah,
notice a
if you
pattern here?
wreck a person that badly, you don't need to debate with them again because you already wrecked them, Grace.
You barely scraped up the
Wrecked
courage
them.
to come here. Give me a break.
Yeah, here's how it went. You ready? Hey, Andrew, you want to come on this panel Monday? Yeah. Yeah, it was rough. It took all the courage that I had, Grace, in my heart. I had to summarize, I had to muster all of it to come on to the panel when Alex said, do you want to come on Monday? And I responded with, yeah.
Are you listening?
That,
to
that
this?
is how it
Well,
happened.
you want to prove?
Okay.
Do you want to prove that you're not pussies? Do you want to prove that you're not a pussy?
By
Andrew?
what?
Because
Debating your dad so your dad could take your place? Just say debate my
Yeah.
dad.
As you said, as you said, you can wreck me, right? I'm a 20-year-old girl. Go ahead. Are you a pussy? You won't let him on any panels. Neither of you will. You're both terrified of him. So you
It's
take
not
me
my
in his
show. Why are you
place 'cause
asking
know I'm
me?
a
It's not
20-year-old
my
girl.
show, Grace.
When I
Honestly,
said I'm
gonna
not a
be
debater.
honest, I had to stop interacting with your dad because every single fucking girl that I know, he's fucking tried to get with, and it's really creepy. I try to create as much distance between you and him as possible.
Oh, so you're
because
afraid
your
of
whole
him taking
fucking-
away your pussy because you're a little cuck. You're a little faggot.
Well, let's see. If I was a cuck, wouldn't I want him to take my pussy? Are you just like saying random words that you
No,
learned
because
yesterday?
he doesn't like you watching. You have to pay extra for that. A
Wait,
lot
when are we
extra.
gonna talk about race? Changing my race.
So you're terrified of him. So you're both terrified of him
I
because
just know- I just think
Destiny's
he's
afraid
a
of him
creepy
because he's
fuck.
gonna take his pussy away from him, and
Yeah.
Andrew's afraid of him because what? You smashed him so hard last time, Andrew, that you had to delete that debate
Well,
off your channel
Grace, it
because you
sounds
thought
like-
he was
So
a
afraid.
It
because
sounds
you
like
thought he was a
I know
CIA
Oh my
agent.
God, it's getting
Because
loud.
you thought
Grace,
my dad was
it
a
sounds
CIA
like you're
agent.
the
was
one
trying to
who's
take you
afraid.
down
You're
to
trying to
your Russian
replace yourself in a
Orthodox views.
debate. You're trying to
Well, to be
replace
fair,
yourself
I
in a
will,
debate. Grace.
I will comment one thing. I've had multiple female guests tell me to please not have Ben on at the same time as
All
them,
right,
so
friends.
I can't understand the struggle.
I'm putting the theory bar up. Okay, that's going up now. Save me, please, for the love of God.
From Destiny's side.
It's
I've had
because he's a
5 different
creep,
Women
Grace.
approach me. 5 different women approach me that have shut him down because he's like very, very, very forward and very, very, very creepy. With
I don't mind platforming your dad. It's just I can't do it with a lot of women who like
Yeah.
legit say I will not come on.
Remember that time he was driving down the street and started pulling that girl's hair who came to stay with you, Grace?
Yeah, she said it was fine.
Yeah,
So
she's.
what?
Yeah, that's
You
not.
would've-
That's
you
not
would've
fucking
told-
weird
you
and
would
creepy
never,
at all.
You would never touch a woman, right? Your wife probably beats you up every night. Every time you lose a debate, which is always, she beats you real good. So you pay attention next time, right? She's a bodybuilder, right? She's got to have all those muscles
Grace,
for something
Grace.
to beat her.
I'm not pulling.
pussy-ass
I'm not pulling
husband
on random
after
women's
he runs
hairs.
away from Ben Thorpe for the 20th time.
You're trying to
online.
replace yourself in the debate, Grace.
Andrew, you're the traditional one. I'm a 20-year-old girl. What the fuck am I doing?
I
on a
didn't
debate
invite you on the
panel?
panel. Did I? What? Did I set the
Then why
panel
would
up,
you-
Grace?
then Go ahead. I'll switch out for him right now.
It's
No,
not
no, no,
Grace.
no.
It's not my panel, Grace.
It's not an option. It has to be you, Grace. You can't avatar your way to your dad. This is not a Ben Thorpe. It's the Grace Thorpe debate. All right, let's redirect back to the
It's
initial
like
topic.
just
This was-
start seething. How can we direct back?
Thank you, Naomi Chance, for the $2. Skip to the Fredda video, please. Oh, I wish to. Thank you, Gabriel Things, for the $5. My humble contribution. I enjoyed your theory streams. Thank you very much. I do too. Much more than this. Dear God, this is a mistake.
What's the
We'll
argument?
jump ahead shortly to the religious stuff, I think, if this seems like it carries on for too long. Are there timestamps? Are there? Be great if there were. Somebody must have timestamped it somewhere. Somebody wants to go ahead and try and find that timestamp. That would be fantastic, because I do not want to listen to much more of this.
There's no argument.
Grace, okay, if you can make an argument, what do you think about this issue without referencing the people on the stage? I think that would help a lot.
Fish.
Okay. There are people.
Prolific consumers
Women
of
are
nicotine.
contingent on men. So,
Let's go. Let's go.
No, Ben. Negative.
Dude, he looks like a
why
fucking
not,
serial
Alex?
killer.
They want to talk shit.
We-
I'm here.
No, because you were not invited guests to this panel. I'll have you on some other time, but I can't. I have to clear each guest with each person. I haven't asked Andrew,
Go.
Ala, or Destiny.
Thank you, Lily Ten Shoes, for the $10. Very much appreciated. That puts us at about that one up a little bit. There we go. 17. We're close. Close to 25. Quarter movie mark.
If they're okay with talking
Well,
to you, I'm not gonna do like a. I'm not
not
gonna do
personal. Give him 5 minutes. Give him
that's
5
cool.
minutes.
You can have
I'm not gonna
Not
do a
personal.
no. I'm not gonna do a bait and switch on the other people on this panel. It's not what I'm gonna do. That's not fair to everyone else who's here. So if Ben wants to come on, he can text me. We can talk about it. But it's not gonna be a bait and switch last minute.
He doesn't want to switch
I'm not gonna
Ask
do a
them.
bait and switch.
Ask them. Ask them.
It doesn't matter.
Ask Andrew and Destiny.
I don't. I
I'm
don't.
good.
I don't
Make
even-
them say. Make them say they're afraid of it.
Shy Hello, thanks for the $20, and thank you, Cody B, for the $2. So that brings us actually up to 17 to about 39. We are there now. Sweet. Oh, but I'm doing the wrong thing. I need to pull it up like that. 39. We are about there. Fantastic. God, that was the best idea I think I've ever had from a business standpoint. Did I tell you about this? So I've got a theory meter now. So I literally have a bar in the corner of the screen if I'm doing drama stuff that everybody fucking hates, including myself. If I get $100 in donations, I just skip
You
it.
get to bypass them to yourself.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Exactly.
They won't talk to him. They won't give him 5 minutes.
I'm too
I
scared.
don't even
I'm too
care
scared.
if
I
they
can only
say
shit talk him.
Okay,
I can only
Destiny
shit talk
says
him on
he's
his back.
too
I'm too
scared.
scared. I'm so scared.
You can
Yeah.
only shit talk you behind your back.
Yeah, I'm so
What about you,
scared.
Andrew?
Spoken like a true cuck.
Yep, true.
Let's fucking
He's
go.
chain smoking, which is a confirmation that he too is very terrified of your father.
Grace, I was extremely clear that this is going to be you, not you and your dad. Like, I was super clear about that.
Didn't you know they're a package deal?
Let's go, pussies. Come on. Let's go. Come on. Daddy's not gonna hurt you. Just fucking
This is
sit
like
there.
you. This is like a kid who didn't get invited to a party who's standing outside the house for 2 hours, like trying to take you to
Give him 5 minutes. Give him 5 minutes. Give him 5 minutes.
Let me in.
Come on, Alex. You know he's a better debater than I am. He's a better debater than I am.
But you were the one
Much
invited.
better.
Him. He's a different person. You guys are not like a package deal. I guess I didn't know you were. If that's the
Pick on the
case.
fucking girl. Come on.
You gonna let them all pick on me?
Yes.
All 3 of these people have
Do
said
it.
disgusting things about me.
You made it really, really personal. I'm just letting them respond. So far, it's mainly been you and Andrew going at it and making personal attacks at each other. I have no problem platforming them.
5 minutes. 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
It's not
I
happening.
just have to say,
It's not
Grace
happening.
has been kink shaming me in Nick's race play, and I'm very upset about it. Okay.
Well, feel free to make a statement because we haven't heard one word from you so far, Kyla. Don't fucking
That's
do
all I
it.
need to say.
I'm
Okay.
gonna kick you. I am straight up
it.
gonna ban you.
Oh, please do it.
Don't do it. I'm
Do
gonna
it.
ban you from the thing.
Do it.
You're gonna get perma
Do
ban
it,
from
Alex.
that channel.
Do it.
I
Do
don't
it.
recommend you do it. You will be perma
Do it.
banned. I will never have you on.
I don't know. I couldn't hear what you said. I couldn't.
Thank
hear.
you,
You
average
will be
citizen, for the
perma banned
$3.
from
Much
that channel. I
appreciated.
will never have you on again. I will never platform you.
Oh, she gave me the headphones. I didn't hear what you were saying.
President Sunday, please explain Grace Thorpe for the innocents in chat. I feel like that would be committing a war crime. Grace Thorpe is, Grace Thorpe is a person who appears on debate panels, is incredibly obnoxious, and may or may not have had incestuous relationships with her father, who is also doing the same thing. Yeah, anyways, you asked.
And it was all
Different
right.
back to headphones. It's getting super fucking weird. This is a race debate. You can't take your place.
No problem. No problem.
Okay.
I didn't know.
Okay.
Oh, we're going mad. We need to put a doctor.
Bunch
You
of
should get
fucking
Alex
pussy.
you should get Alex to co-host your kick or keep. I feel like this is the energy that we need to be bringing.
All right.
There we go. Now
Let's
let's
get
get back on track.
Yeah, where were
Anyways.
we again? We were waiting for Grace's argument.
I made my argument.
I have
the
made
argument again?
my argument.
Suck.
Oh,
That
you
we
can't
suck?
remember any. Yes,
That
that you
you're bad
two
men.
suck.
Okay, well,
Yes.
my argument
Yes.
back is that
And
you
I'm a
suck.
good woman.
You suck worse. That's my argument back.
Why?
Why? Give me the reason why. Give me the reason
I
why
already
we
told you
suck.
twice. I told you twice.
It's
I
so
told you
weird doing
twice.
this with
Yeah,
you
you
right
have a
there,
creepy
because you can't
relationship with
see
your
anything
dad.
I'm
You have a
responding
creepy
to, but I still
relationship
have to
with
do
your
this
family.
You're
without
a
any
fake
self-awareness
man.
of somebody
You're a fake man who
watching
tries
me.
to puff up his
Just
ego
making random,
by-
like, it's
by
there's
being
no way to do this
aggressive
comfortably.
towards 20-year-old girls online and being an asshole. That's
Oh
why
my
you're
God,
correct.
it's a
You're
whale.
correct.
The 20-year-old girl who
Or a
just
shark.
ran to get her father to debate with me.
All right, let's
You're
again.
correct.
I want to stop. Both of you stop. I want to get it back on track. It was fun for a while. Let's get it back on track. Kyla literally has not said one word this whole time.
Good.
I don't even know if she can talk.
These are
That's
positive
the best part of the
developments.
debate, though, so far.
Let's
Because I'm
bring
a
it.
based
let's-
alpha male. I
Let's
don't
bring
know.
it back on track. So there's clearly disagreements between Andrew's position and Kyla's and Destiny's
Careful.
position. So that's a good point to start on. Grace, we're still not really sure what your position is. If you
Yeesh.
could explain how you feel about this topic without referencing people on the panel, that would make it a lot more clear what your thoughts on this are, and then we can have an actual debate.
Okay, women are torn between two options. They can either be rad trad traditional wives with fake masculine men at their helm, or they can be whores who get used by liberal men who may or may not have.
Women have two options. They can be rad trad wives with fake masculine men, or they can be whores with liberal husbands. Wise answer.
Blue hair and, a sad face right now. So,
Okay.
Oh, wait.
We can build
and
on.
you can forget
With blue hair and a sad face right now.
Zoomer guys altogether. They're all addicted to porn. They're sweethearts, but they have no idea how to deal with women. So, women who are contingent on men don't have any men who can provide them with stability and security. That's why.
All right, we got an argument. Let the debate begin.
You are giving her a tremendous amount of respect she does not
I
deserve.
don't know where we're at.
Oh,
I don't
gosh.
remember.
That'd be me.
I don't remember where we're at.
Oh, Grace,
Grace thinks it's all men.
You know, you're saving graces. You don't know who I'm
Saying,
responding
I don't
to.
know if the happiness thing is
Oh, that's
exclusively
weird.
gendered. And I think I'm sorry, it's been so
I had
long,
eel
actually
earlier.
can't
It was very
remember
good.
your
I actually don't blame you. I honestly don't blame you for once.
He's
For
quite
once.
forgettable, yeah.
It's also apparently very unsustainable.
All right, so why don't we let Andrew repeat his argument really quickly?
Oh, I said I think that the primary reason for the decline in happiness, while I would concede that yes, it is across both sexes, that the reason that it's heightened for women in a general sense is because of the change in dynamic of family. So I think it's a change in dynamic of family and the amount of children being born less, and I think that the kind of primary function of women, if you will, their overwhelming biological need is to have children. I think that's hardwired into them, and that when they have children, they tend to be happier.
Okay, there we go. I think Destiny and Kyla can definitely work with that.
Guess I just have to discard it.
Kyle, I
Then.
already talked.
Fuck, sorry. I was distracted partway through by Ned, guys.
Wow.
I'm sorry. He was just asking me a question about some short stuff. Okay.
Did you send him back to do the dishes? There you go, little boy. Make sure you do what mommy told you to.
Well,
Get
it's
your
race
treat.
play. It's race play, actually, so I prefer if you don't shame it.
What race is he? He's white.
If families made women more happy, they've got the opportunity to choose families right now. Why wouldn't they just do that? You think that like every woman in society? Because in order for the conservative theory to be true here, two huge sets of women are making mistakes. One, all moms are making mistakes because it's oftentimes moms that are pushing the daughters to go get school,
Shapes in the
to go get an
deep.
education, to go get the career, so
Okay,
that they
where
don't
am I
have to live
going?
like the same lives that they did. And then two,
There
all
we
the
go.
women that are being pushed are making the mistakes of doing it as well. If it was like so much better to just be a mom, why wouldn't women just be like, fuck it, let's go settle down and have kids?
Well, because overwhelmingly they're kind of trained to want these goal markers, which is security based. Things like a college education, you see them going after higher education far more often than men, for instance. You see them kind of going for those markers more and more and more. And so it's societally reinforced, in other words, and has been for a while. We've been kind of moving towards starting families later and later and later when people are more financially secure. So women are waiting longer and longer. That's one of the primary reasons that there's a decline in the birth rates to begin with, is because women are waiting until later to have families. So when they even do have children, they don't have as many as they would have had if they had started when they were younger, because there's a kind of a time stopgap on this.
Well, even that's not necessarily true, right? Like, it's not like women tend to limit the amount of kids they have by how long they can have kids, right?
I
Like, the
mean,
average
that
woman probably
necessarily
wants, like,
wait, that
1 to 4
necessarily
kids at the most.
wait, that necessarily follows that
Wait, what?
women are more fertile when they're younger. Of course
It
they
doesn't matter if
are.
you're more. You can easily have kids up to probably 40.
You can, that's true, but the
Uh,
amount of defects and other risks which are associated with it greatly.
That is not a guarantee, friendo. That is like for a lot of people that's true. That's a questionable statement for a lot of people.
increase past X age. So
Yeah, well,
when,
X
if you're
age is
looking,
35, but again, even at 40, if you really want to have kids, you can still have kids.
you
That's no
can,
problem.
but you're going to have less probably than if you started having them in your 20s.
Yeah, but how many people started in their 20s or started in their 30s? If you
I'm
start
sure this qualifies as extortions from Sunday. I'm a pirate, of course it is.
when you're 30 years old, you could easily have 10 kids.
You can,
But it's not like we see
but
these people
you-
like, God, I only
but
have
it's
10 kids.
but
I
it's
got
far
20.
more. You can, but it's
Also,
far
thank you,
more
Naomi, for the
risky.
$5.
And
And this,
generally
please.
speaking, if you look at the trends,
Well, we're close. What are we at right now?
Yeah,
Hang on,
just-
let's see. So we are at 43. We are so close to halfway there. And then it's over. And then it's all over. You guys know what you have to do. I'm suffering through this too. That's why I'm focusing on Dredge over here.
riskier to have a child even at 30 than it is to have them when you're
I think
24,
the risk
25.
increase is really minimal until basically 35.
didn't-
where we
I
start
didn't
seeing
Oh,
give
thank
you
God.
a
Okay, hang on.
percentile.
Wait, but it will get a little bit better. Boots, thank you. The utilitarian god stuff starts at 150.10. Much obliged. 150.10. We'll go to 150. Bless you.
that I think is going to add to this conversation. As Kyla or Destiny, they think Len and the Plug's relationship with Adam 2 is an example of healthy or unhealthy on first glance.
What the hell did he just say?
They seem happy to me, but this is an extraordinary relationship. You're talking about two people that do pornography professionally and live their whole lives in the public eye. Like, that's a rough one. That relationship, that's always, even a perfectly monogamous Christian couple living that public a relationship is going to be really difficult. So I don't know. It's a hard one. I don't know either of them well enough to say.
What about you, Kyla?
I think that's a pretty good interpretation. In general, would that be something I recommend for the average couple? No, but most couples aren't famous podcasters who do porn professionally, so it's not something in general that would generalize well to the public. But yeah, I would say in general, if that was a non-professional porn, that might be an issue. But
you don't feel though
now,
that
Kyla, I gotta ask you.
Oh, okay.
Within your Christian ethics.
Here we are.
That they do public pornography.
No. I'm teaching my ship.
I'm asking you if you think it's
are
ethical.
They Christian? Yeah, I'm asking you. I don't.
I didn't realize the rocks did that kind of damage.
Know something about Adam.
I don't think so.
Oh, then I don't give a fuck what religious people do. I don't require them to follow my precepts.
Okay, so just so there's no
I try to follow the book.
So there's no criteria for you, or can you say that
That's the erudite follows the book. She tries to do what Jesus does, apparently. I am the way and the truth and the psychometrician.
that's immoral?
Religious predilections.
Yeah, can you say that that's immoral or not?
Yeah, this is the problem.
No, it's not immoral?
Yeah.
No, for that, no.
Is anything immoral? Hang on, Kyla. Is
you?
anything immoral?
I'm not.
Wait, I have a
Is anything immoral, Kyla? Shut up, Grace. I haven't talked at all. Kyla, is anything immoral? Anything. What? What is immoral? What?
Things that utilitarian-wise, everyone would agree.
So
What?
your entire ethical.
So, hang on. So she's a Christian theist. She tries to live by the book, quote unquote, and do what Jesus did. But the condition of things being moral is whether or not they are things that everyone agrees has utilitarian value. Ambrose is giving me one of the most violently disgusted faces I've ever seen. Okay, so here's the thing. Whether or not you subscribe to utilitarianism practically, utilitarianism is a fundamentally economic moral system. It's making this is a stupid way to put it, but it's making the best of what you've got, essentially. It's saying you have things you can allocate, you have decisions you can make, what determines the good is what maximizes utility. But you don't have to maximize utility from the perspective of God. So a Christian moral worldview that is in the world but not of it, and so on and so forth, is going to be about as anti-utilitarian as you can get. That's one of the reasons why it doesn't tend to make for particularly good, like a good basis for a political community and whatnot. That's just comically absurd.
The system has nothing to do with Christianity. It has to do with secular utilitarian ethics.
You already admitted that God is a utilitarian. So
What?
It's never happened.
You did.
God is a utilitarian. I thought that was a joke. No, she's actually... That doesn't make any sense. Why would God be utilitarian? God's supposed to be all-powerful. God doesn't have to be a utilitarian. You have to be a utilitarian given limited control over limited resources and having to care for a discrete body, like that which produces the most utility for the greatest number of people, presumably within a community. God is a utilitarian, apparently. Your thoughts, please.
By definition, God has always already maximized utility, and so the need to distribute utility to maximize it would make no sense.
God has made the world as a test for us to maximize utility, apparently.
No, that's not what I said. I said God by definition.
No,
has
I'm
maximized
retorting
utility.
to you.
No, that makes literally absolutely no sense, and also that would be the unique task of people, but he wouldn't know what the ideal outcome of that would be because that's mind dependent on people's own wishes and their instantiation of quotes his will, right?
Yeah, that.
Tell me when.
In this conversation,
When?
you agreed that God is
Well, you just
utilitarian.
made
You
that
said
up in your crazy
you said that
brain.
it's all about extents and stretches, and that like as things like change over time, like when it comes to
That this
the
never
drug
occurred.
use, that it
Literally
like
never
drug
occurred.
Use reflects and subjects
You just
God
made
is
the whole thing
utilitarian.
up in your brain. I've never said anything about God being a utilitarian. That's one. Two, I want to ask you,
implied it, of course.
are you saying that
And
you
you
don't
did. You just
derive
did.
your morality from Christianity? You derive it from utilitarian ethics, secular ethics?
For society, for other people, for the most part, for myself, I believe that Christians committing sin is immoral. But if you're not a Christian, I
Then you
still
can't
think you
do
can
any
immoral
wrong?
things. No. Do you want me to answer? Do you
Yes.
want me to building your
I
narrative?
do
Oh,
want you to answer.
Okay, he is shouting over it pretty loudly. Robin Page says, if God was real, he'd have to be a utilitarian, all-knowing plus all-loving plus perfect reason equals perfect understanding and total desire for best outcomes for us. No, but the problem is utilitarianism is a particular way of construing the best outcome itself. So wanting the best outcome doesn't make you a utilitarian. What makes you a utilitarian is that you conceive of the best outcome as being that which is a maximization of utility. Fair?
The whole point of utilitarianism is that there's legitimate moral choice as well about what would constitute the best outcome, therefore making it mind dependent and dependent on man's will, not God. So it could be that God wanted us all to be utilitarians under some bizarre read, but God himself would not be a utilitarian. That's a unique.
Well, I guess if you wanted to construe God as mind, but the problem, though, once again, is God can't be a utilitarian simply because that's not a perspective that makes sense kind
No,
of
it
in like a...
What I'm saying is God could will it such that individual people would want to make moral judgments that considered outcome as well as deontic principles, but even that would not make God a utilitarian. And to be so specific as to attribute human ethical systems to God would require a kind of you'd have to have an explanatory force you couldn't muster in this kind of argument. Like, there's no way you could attribute that to God. These are uniquely human inventions. Any kind of ethical system. It's just a matter of where the principles are derived from. So in a deontic system, the principles are derived from the notion of God.
Well, that's something you could probably, like, counter the notion of theistic morality generally. You could say something very similar. What's kind of... So what you're missing, because you're not able to watch this, is not so erudite, our favorite person, is being asked, is anything moral? And she's... or is anything immoral? And she's attempting to square being a destiny suck-up and having to be a utilitarian as her sort of baseline to justify basically anything that she does. And then secondly, trying to justify her sort of Christian identity. And so how she seems to have done this is to have construed God as a utilitarian when it suits her, I suppose.
The actually intelligent way of doing this would be to link in the Aristotelian notion of eudaimonia, right? Like, I would not make this argument, but it would be something along the lines of, if we are the most happy when we are the most ourselves, and human beings uniquely use reason,
Yeah.
then the most reasonable existence is the best existence. And therefore, any ethical system that contributes to that outcome of being ideally reasonable will give us a eudaimonic existence most in keeping with our nature. And maybe that system is
You can kind of,
yeah,
like,
see what I mean? So even, but the point, Mill's whole
Yeah,
point
yeah,
of
yeah.
utilitarianism was that it just because it doesn't require something in the sky or something beneath one's feet,
Yeah.
does not mean that it's morally bereft. You know, we have to think about what would be in our best interests, and so you could throw in a naturalistic explanation in there and say, well, what's in our best interest is what God would will us to be, but that's the only point that God could really come into the equation. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. There's nothing in the ethical system itself that requires God. Only the reference to how we might construe the good having a naturalistic explanation, if you choose to take that route, may require God. That's the best you could do to match those things in.
Yeah, once
See
again,
what I'm saying?
yeah, I think we're just giving them too much credit once again, just because.
Well, yeah, I'm not
There's
giving it credit. I'm just saying
no,
things
yeah,
are
yeah,
just
no, I know.
disagree.
Sorry, I'm not impugning you with giving
No,
giving
it's
her
okay,
credit.
it's okay.
I'm just saying, like,
Can they hear what I'm saying, by the way?
they can, unfortunately.
okay.
I probably should have informed you first. I thought I did.
Yeah, also known as Ambrose. Hope you're all doing well.
No, you don't. There are a lot of bad people in the audience. We don't want them to do well. That would be anti-utilitarian.
I mean our lovely chat.
Our lovely chat.
Moderators.
This is true.
Hi, Pippa.
Yeah, so you're making the fundamental but understandable philosophical error of assuming that the people I'm responding to are people.
See, this is all just like off the cuff, not knowing the context, and just going off of his interpretation of what's happening right now.
Not even my interpretation, just my like dumb gesticulations at it. I'm not giving you my interpretation.
Want to
You see what I
listen?
mean? It's
I'm
like,
listening.
It's
My
external to
daddy
the
voice.
process of even reasoning through ethically. Like,
There you go.
yeah.
We'll roll with that.
Yeah,
I-
use whatever voice you think
Yeah, it's-
that can answer the question.
Daddy voice. So, the answer to
Sunday
this
we louder than
voice-
guest? Yeah, but there's a reason for that. That's because the microphone, as you can see, is here, and my guest is there. Here, say hi.
Hi, you see now I'm probably louder than he is, so
There
hey.
you go.
I was talking in the background and then it kind of turned into an informal accidental guest situation, so guest light. Guestish.
Guestish.
Yes.
Guestish.
Guestish.
That's true. Good job. Basically, what I said is that drugs are fine, sex is fine. In the case of society, I tend to use a utilitarian frame model because for Christians,
Drugs are fine and sex is fine. New Testament is famous for reinforcing this.
there's a different code of ethics that they're required to live by than
We're a fan of
non-religious
drugs
people.
and sex
This is
and
very
stuff.
standard in most religious
Apparently.
practices. You don't put your religious predilections on other people. I'm not a fucking Muslim. I don't need to have a political system based out of my religion.
Fair enough. So from your perspective, though, as a Christian, is what they're doing immoral?
They're not Christian.
That's not my question. From your perspective as a Christian, following the ethics you do, you still know
Wait.
what's moral and immoral, informed by your Christianity, is what they're doing immoral.
No, of course not.
Oh my god, she's an idiot. So, okay, so she's trying to make the argument. By the way, none of us are, like, adherents. She's saying that from her Christian worldview, if people engage in etc., things listed as sins in the New Testament say, if they're not Christian, they are not engaging in something immoral. From her vantage as that. To which my immediate response is like, there's actually verses directly addressing that. So, actually, I wonder if I can find it off the cuff. I don't even remember which book it's in. It's been a long time. There's I think there's a verse involving is it the one where the disciples are like threshing wheat in the field on the Sabbath or something? But there are...
Well, the problem with making what is moral identical to what is Christian
Yeah.
is that it begs the question about both terms, right?
Oh, it does, but she's
Yeah.
taking a vantage point. I mean, like, like I would defy that this could be construed as like something containing specifically moral edicts in the first place, because when you talk about like what is moral in that sense, you're typically talking about a system that sort of transcends the particular moment. And we're not referring, like when we say like God commands this or God condemns this or something like that, we're not saying X or Z is moral or immoral. We're saying exactly that sentence.
Okay, okay.
You want to mute? You want the mic? Okay, here you go.
I don't need you to mute
Okay.
anything. So again, this is kind of a bit off the cuff. And again, the acoustics might be strange because I'm kind of sitting near the mic. It strikes me as something that's closer to a series of edicts rather than anything you could call moral. In any proper sense, because the idea that, like, you know, I know Sunday you don't agree with the idea that ethics is downstream from morality, but rather ethics shapes the nature of what we construe as moral. So really, it's the opposite way around. But in general,
with that though.
But there's an interesting kind of almost Confucian. I don't want to get into this, but this is something I do know a little bit about, not Neo-Confucianism, but older Confucianism, as well as scholastic reasoning, whereby what is moral is issued in a series of edicts that themselves are taken to have a sort of preternatural force, right? So the semantic content of the words isn't what's relevant. Yeah, you can turn this AC off. Like semantic contents of the words isn't what's relevant. What's relevant is that anything issued by X is immediately determined to be moral. And if this is an authentic recording of anything issued by X moral authority, whether that's Confucius or God, then it's deemed to be moral and to be indicative of some kind of greater wisdom that one does not have, like, natural hermeneutic access to. Like, in other words, you can't just interpret it for yourself.
Yeah.
You have to be able to take a look at it and say, okay, this is, in fact, being directly delivered to me as something that is beyond my comprehension, which is a really, in my opinion, clever way of making it so that you can never actually question that something that's being didactically thrown at you is moral, right? Like, that's...
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, so in other words, like, the question is, could a didactic list ever be moral? On its own, no. But the idea is that it has force from some kind of being whose words are always moral by dint of the nature of that being or source. So that would be the sort of tricksy way around it. Like, that's how I would see it.
Well, I think one thing that's happening, no appearance on camera, sorry. I think one thing that's happening is, and what's allowing people to play kind of fast and loose with this, is that we're sort of waffling between a morality that is sort of downstream from the edict and a morality that sort of transcends or precedes the giving of the edict.
Well, because here's what, on the surface, like, and again, like, this is just me sort of, like, speaking off the cuff about this, and of course I'm no, theologian or religious scholar or anything like that. I'm just a philosopher, analytic philosopher. But when you kind of think about the nature of Scripture and what it demands of us, there's this sort of double force that doesn't make a lot of sense. So on the one hand, if one were to have sufficient faith, they would interpret the words they would not need to interpret the words in Scripture. They would simply receive them in some capacity as some kind of, moral edict that had force by dint of the source. But on the flip side, there's a sense in which, no, you really do have to interpret the words. Otherwise, why would we even have, Thomism? Why would we even have Thomism versus Augustinianism or anything like that, right? Clearly, there's an interpretive mechanism that is required in order to understand it, which goes against what gives it the moral force to begin with, which is that it's always correct because the authority is always correct, and the authority has, in truth, portrayed its stance in these words. So there's a bit of like a contradiction there, right?
Well, it's
around
funny.
hermeneutics, so,
Well, it's funny because Kyla just finished saying she's not a Muslim, therefore she doesn't need like a political philosophy or whatever to come out of her religion. But on that point, like, this is one of the reasons why people are so devout Muslims are very particular. If you're not reading it in the original Arabic, you're not reading the actual Quran, and it's really important that the original Arabic was transmitted untainted from the time of the original recording, because that supposedly takes away that interpretive buffer that changes the nature of the edict itself from something that has any didactic property to something that simply relocates the moral framework that sort of pre-exists the edict into your brain somehow.
Which is bizarre because there's absolutely no way that could ever be a transcription instead of a translation, right? And a translation by dint of
even just by your eyeball reading the word.
Exactly, right? Like, so even on a quite literal level, a translation requires interpretation, right? It required interpretation on the part of the translator. Like, genuinely, transcription is actually an exceedingly difficult task. Anybody who's tried to come close with Hegel, for instance, has found themselves absolutely dumbfounded. And so there's this sort of joke I know that you've talked to me about too among like Hegel scholars, where in transcribing to English, it is so incoherent that translation like becomes necessary for the sake of coherence.
Well, one thing
right?
that's disturbing about that, like, so Hegel has a reputation in English of being an exceedingly difficult reader, or writer. Mm-hmm. But I've heard people who have read Kant and Hegel in the original German who will say Kant is the worst writer, which terrifies me because it means that when we're reading those two, are we actually getting any of the flavor of their actual writing at all? Because it seems like one, like, I don't know, for example, if people are kind of defaulting in a certain way with one with one theorist as opposed to the other, or things like that. Oh, I think that a lot of it too is like with Hegel, a lot of the issue isn't even the language, just like the length and circuitousness of the sentences.
I mean, one thing that's interesting too is, and I'll give it back to you after this, because there's some stuff I need to do, but is when you think about the nature of language itself. And so German is a noun-based language, right? So, you know,
I don't know that.
my father is German, and one of the jokes that they would play around in kindergarten together would be to take a gerund, or just take a base and then to put prefixes and suffixes on it until you had this hugely complex, ridiculous noun that would describe some precise feeling. Like, you know, there's a German word that I think means the awe and horror and beauty of wandering in the woods in solitude, and it's like one word. Versus in French, it's a verb-based language, and so everything is like, and then he was, you know, proceeding to consider this reality versus that reality. And English is kind of a mashup. So how can you even transcribe accurately from a language that either has a different subject, verb, object order, or that has different parts of speech as its principles? Because you're going to have completely different concepts if you start from nouns versus verbs. So, you know, I'm not a linguist, but at the same time, it's you would assume transcription required at least some commonality in the form between languages too, right? So that's another argument against transcription being possible.
Well, like 90% of what's going on here is, well, in the case that I just mentioned, is transcription is being sort of skipped over. It's taking place at some level of analysis. We're just locating that in a zone that is sort of unknown and squishy and kind of like, you sort of take it for granted. So it's like the processing of your brain, the receiving of the image through your senses somehow, whatever involves the transformation of that into some kind of legible symbol in your head, whatever. As long as the transcription, yeah, exactly. As long as the transcription is taking, he was just whispering purse. As long as the transcription takes place somewhere like that, for some reason we're kind of just comfortable ignoring that it's taking place. Because I guess God just so arranged our organs so that we receive it anyways.
Well, it's interesting because I would need to defer to you on
What's
this.
interesting is that this is being stated by somebody who claims psychological credentials. It's like,
But I mean, the only thing I can think of that I even vaguely approaches it is something like, if God was very focused on translating the word and ensuring that people's knowledge of him and knowledge of, you know, the world beyond was commensurate, then why does everyone speak different languages? You have like the Tower of Babel is this weird kind of explanation that, again, in the text itself, it becomes very apparent that even people who are 200 miles away from each other in like a discrete region of Syria won't actually share the same language and will require interpretation across to each other.
yeah.
So how on earth could a document that is meant to be the amalgam of God's word on earth ever be something that could be transcribed, even amongst individuals?
Oh, it's worse than that, though. It's worse than that, because we're not even talking about something that's transcribed amongst individuals, because the meaning of the text is now additionally augmented by it being compiled together with other texts from different times and places, having certain ones excluded, and being put into a specific order, and then being translated in such a way as there is common language between different books written in different languages at different times.
And yet we should just like kind of transcribe its meaning nonetheless, as this sort of like. But like we've mashed everything into a ball. Good job, guys. We've spray painted the ball gold, and now it's like a chunk of gold. Like that's basically what we're saying.
Eudaimonia asks, does anyone take the Tower of Babel story literally? Obviously we do. It's because it's cool.
It's also a really bad translation engine.
It's a really bad translation.
Babelfish.
Babelfish?
Remember Babelfish?
Isn't that from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
No, it's literally like a terrible it's a terrible language translator for about 10 years
Oh yeah,
ago.
but
It
it's
was
named
like
after something from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Yeah, 'cause I think it's a
Nice.
fish that they ingest that makes you able to speak any language.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's not immoral that they're porn stars on the internet?
It's
What
not
is
From a
immoral for
Christian
Christians?
what the fuck?
For Christians,
I've never heard
it is
anything
immoral.
that insane literally in my whole life ever.
Okay, as long as you say it loud enough. Do you want to say that you've won too, Andrew?
I have one. That was the
Christian
stupidest
law
thing I've
teaches
ever
us
heard.
about it.
We did
If
the
an
full
atheist,
bingo
if
of
an
debating
atheist
Andrew.
kills, if an atheist kills somebody, does that make
What?
it not immoral because they
It's
don't
not
believe in
immoral
God?
from a Christian from
No,
her
I would say
standpoint.
that atheists killing people is immoral. I already said
Okay.
From what?
So I can't remember the exact verse, but there is a verse. Sorry, I'm not yelling at you now. There is a verse that goes to the effect of, if they were aware, I'm paraphrasing this brutally. If they were blind, they're not responsible for what they couldn't see. If they were aware, then they are responsible for what they could see. Like, I need to find this. Ugh. I wonder if I had the wherewithal to bookmark it. Maybe I did. It's been a little while, though. I know I've talked about this before, though. Not on stream, but with people. I'm not going to look too long, don't worry. I'll find it later. It's not important right now. It might be in Luke, actually. Weird we were talking about this earlier. That's odd coincidence. Yeah. No dice. Last one. Yeah. It's fine. Let's press on.
Yeah, but
From-
they don't believe in the Christian.
Wait.
What are you talking
Okay, hold on.
about?
I
What?
will slow down for the class. You guys can keep up. I believe in you. I do. I have already explicitly said there are certain precepts that I would say for Christians are different than for
Like, the Bible has verses explicitly against even thinking about sex with other people, much less pornography on the internet. Like, she's going to claim that it's not against Christian morals to have pornography. That's they're like, you're not even allowed to think lustfully about other human beings without it being adultery in your heart. He doesn't even specify if they're married or not. So,
secular people.
I don't know where she's
There
getting
are
that from.
obviously things that secular people can do
Which is
that
why
are
we're asking
moral.
from your purview. From
Right.
your
My
ethical
purview.
system. From your from
My
not so
ethical system.
erudite's ethical system.
Yes.
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 I would say that if you're not a Christian, I wouldn't say that you're doing something immoral by doing Christian sin because you're not a Christian.
So why is murder
Basically,
wrong?
the Hug and Adam.
So why is murder wrong from a secular standpoint then, erudite?
Because, okay, if you want to go into utilitarianism, because in
Yeah.
a society
Oh,
where murder
sorry about
is
that.
okay, it leads to harm for everyone. It seems to.
Is someone getting weird background noise like water or something? I think the washer's running. God damn it. It's all good. But
a
thank you, though.
society that is worse if everyone thinks that murder is just okay. A society is better and reduces harm when you
What?
prohibit murder and punish it.
So you hold two separate ethical value structures. One for yourself and one for society. How do you know which one is wrong?
Because Gentiles don't have to appeal to Christian morals.
Okay, I'm not
What?
asking what Gentiles must do. I'm asking you as a Christian, how do you know Gentiles are incorrect and immoral if they're doing these things? How do you know that? What would inform you?
No, this is why this is absurd. At least one apostle, and I think Christ at one point, has to explicitly say, God forgive them, they know not what they do. If they weren't doing something immoral despite not knowing it, why would they have to be forgiven? That doesn't make any sense.
What would inform? Why would why
now we
would
got
you?
into meta-ethics.
And why
Woo,
would
you're
utilitarianism?
utilitarian.
Why would
My
utilitarianism be
fundamental
correct?
Yeah, sure, we can get into the fundamental axiom. My fundamental axiom.
You can't
is
hold two
utilitarian
contrary
society.
sets of beliefs. That's insane.
They aren't contrary sets.
They
of
are
beliefs.
contrary
They
sets of
fully
beliefs.
represent each other. They're not contrary. I
They're
understand
pretty
that
contrary.
you can't keep up and comprehend this, but they are not complementary.
Oh,
Does
no.
utilitarian?
Case-
If they're not contrary, then answer
the
this
case of
question.
religious
Answer this
people-
question if they're not contrary. From
No,
a
actually,
utilitarian
I'm going to continue
standpoint,
answering the previous question
from
about
util-
if you just
utilitarian
throw Xing out
standpoint,
questions.
from
I will
util-
just keep talking
I just want to finish this
till-
point and I'll
I
let
will
you
just
talk.
keep talking. I'm not going to.
I
because
just
still
want you to
haven't
answer
answered your
one
previous
question, and then I'll let you
No,
talk as
I'm
much as
going
you
to
want.
answer your previous
Okay,
That was-
fine. I
Then
won't
you can
forget.
ask
That was Jesus on the cross. I think it was also an apostle being stoned, but I'd have to double check. It's weird how you lose the details of this. I used to have like an encyclopedic knowledge of this stuff.
for sure.
I'm not going to forget, but go ahead. I won't forget.
Okay.
Go ahead.
My Christian ethics are over my national contractual ethics for myself. However, part of my Christian ethics personally is to not hold secular people to my Christian ethics
Aha.
because they are not Christian. So if society imposed some sort of demand on me that was against my Christian ethics, I would disobey society. If
No, you
society
wouldn't.
made it a law
you
that I
wouldn't. I
had to
don't
do
believe
something
you.
that I thought was heretical to my faith, I would
Give me a
disobey
break.
society. Do you understand?
So let me ask you.
Tracking.
Okay, got it. So let me ask you this question: can secular ethics and your ethics, at the same exact time, if secular ethics claims that pornography is moral, and your ethics claim that pornography is immoral?
Thank you, Nerodia, for the $5. Celebrate the first super chat from Nerodia. I will by singing it. Always look on. No, you can't. I can't. You can hear me and you'll look at me awkwardly. I'm sorry, Nerodia. You can't. There's people here.
Are those compatible ethical systems?
I don't. First of all, you're assuming a bunch about my claims about ethics around pornography.
Just answer my question.
Well, I can't answer your
You
question.
can't answer it
You-
because you know what the
No,
answer
hold on,
is.
hold on. I'm not letting you do this.
Answer the
reason
fucking
I can't
question.
Answer it. No, the reason I can't answer this question specifically, Andrew, is because you're doing what you always do in every debate.
Yeah,
which is
winning.
Bad faith.
Winning.
You're begging the question.
Yeah, everybody who
I
wins
added
debates
into
bad
the-
faith, I know.
Are you gonna let me talk, Andrew? Or you're just gonna keep
Answer
saying,
the
"I'm
question."
winning," until
Wait, stop,
people
stop, stop,
believe you.
stop, stop. Let's let Kala finish and then you can-
Unbelievable.
These two things are compatible because it is fine for me, for thee, and not for me. That is compatible. Different people can have different ethical systems within utilitarian. They can have different things that are okay and not okay, and still work within my framework. I would say it is okay for thee, but not for me. For example, one thing that's not okay for me is like watching a whole bunch of like true crime and shit like that because it makes me super distrustful of other people. I would say in general,
What?
Talking
if
about
the
preference,
Wait,
not
wait,
morality.
wait, no. Let her finish, and then it's Angel's turn to respond, and then she. Okay, go ahead.
in the case of all sorts of stuff, as you would probably agree, even you said it here. You already said this.
Thank you, Insomnoir, for the $5. The words you were thinking of were said by both Jesus and Stephen. Right. That's what I was thinking of, Stephen. If someone wants to be Christian and thinks porn is okay, I don't care. Personally, people can call themselves whatever they like and believe whatever they like. Well, I don't care about that either. However, she's trying to make the argument... What is she trying to make the argument for? She's trying to do two inconsistent things. She's trying to say that Christian ethics is compatible with a statement because it allows her to hold on to her Christian identity as a part of her brand, right? This is not somebody who demonstrates like a particular concern for Christian ethics besides context in which it serves her in an argument. Let's move this up here. We are only about $40 to skip out of this to the theory, guys. So
Andrew
close.
said, in the case of, for example, Christians, you can chain smoke because it doesn't make you go crazy. But if you had a psychotic break and it led to you doing a whole bunch of bad stuff, that would be bad for them. So that's you saying, oh, it's fine for me, but not for thee in this case. I'm just doing the inverse of saying there are some things that I think are fine for other people that are not okay for me. That all
So,
works together.
now I'm going to ask you this question again. Only one set of these moral preferences can be true. Only one of them can be true. So are your Christian ethics true, or are utilitarianism, if utilitarianism conflicts with your Christian ethics, knowing only one can be true by the laws of logic, which one's true?
I reject your premise and the way that
You,
pose
well,
your
okay,
premise.
then to show me the contradiction, from which you reject my premise.
You're begging the question by again saying
There's
that
no
the two
question
systems-
begging.
Your question that you are begging is saying
That's
how
not
do you
question
pull two
begging, you
contradictory-
idiot.
Yes, it is.
Well, tell me what
Yes,
question
it
begging is. You don't even know. Tell me what it
You
is.
tell me.
Wait, hang on. Let's let her
Oh, I
respond.
tell you what it is. You accused me of it. Tell me what it is. Tell me what question begging is. Tell me what it
You wanna
is.
just-
Wait, just let her respond.
Yeah, she's not going to answer that question either. Tell me what it is.
Bro, you do
You're not
this
gonna
thing
do it.
in every fucking
Not
debate
gonna
where
do
you
it.
ask 60 hold on, you ask 60,000 questions. You pivot and weasel away from
No, I
answers.
just ask you
Notice how
straight questions you
weaseled
won't
away?
answer.
Notice how you weaseled away from the conversation about your
Happy to have that
single
conversation too, but you accused me of
You
question
asked
begging.
90 are you going to let me answer?
You
Keep
accused me.
interrupting me and building your narrative. Are you going to keep interrupting
You
me? and
can't
building
accuse
your
me of a
narrative?
fallacy, then not tell me the
Alex, I have an
fallacy.
actual relationship.
Tell me
Okay,
the
I heard-
fallacy.
Okay, guys, go ahead.
Okay. Can I take a stab at this? Okay. You can absolutely hold two different quote-unquote set of ethics. You're not holding contrary sets of ethics, though. You can understand is you can have a system of morals that stands in contradiction to the law. For instance, a Catholic might believe that it's immoral to consume pornography, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a Catholic would prescribe that it changes the law in the country that they're in, right? In a way, you could read
That's
this
not the
as a
argument.
render unto Caesar. What?
That's
Hold on.
not
No. It doesn't seem to be the argument because you're conflating the law
It
and
doesn't seem to be
morality. So
because it's not.
when you ask somebody, do you consider it a sin when somebody does something else? Generally, what is or isn't a sin is something that you're concerned with, and you're concerned with other people in your faith. Personally, I've never been in the business of, or seen other Christians at least, maybe for Muslims it's different, maybe for Jews it's different, maybe for other people it's different, is trying to evaluate. I never in my life, I took 4 years of fucking Catholic.
What are you talking about? The Bible is filled with such evaluations. This is ubiquitous. You know what the major work of Saint Augustine is called? It's not the City of God. It's the City of God against the pagans. This is... I mean, arguably, the book of Genesis is a polemic against other worshipping systems by... what's the word I'm looking for? By, I guess, desacralizing all of the different, like, things in the natural world that competing groups would have treated as being inhabited by godlike things. This is dumb. Also, there's religious people in the panel. All they would have to do is demonstrate exactly what he's saying never takes place, and his point falls flat on its face. This is so dumb.
High school, 8 years of Catholic grade school. Never once did we have a class where we went through, what do Muslims do that's sinful? What do Jewish people do that's sinful? We've never done that before. We're concerned with what are sins in our society, the Christian church, the Catholic Church specifically.
Can I
What
trouble
does the
you?
Catechism say? What does the
Yeah.
Creed say?
Okay,
And
that's
then
great,
where it
but
starts to
repeat
stop.
my
Hold on,
argument
hold on,
back
hold
to
on,
me.
Let me hold on.
You're arguing against a straw man.
No. You've traveled like 20,000 different.
I haven't
acres
traveled
of argument.
anywhere.
Well,
Repeat
you
my
covered
argument
so
back
much.
to
As you
me.
say it, it's true.
And then
Okay,
argue
okay,
against
okay,
that.
fine,
I just want a
fine.
good faith debate. Tell me my
I'm trying
argument.
to answer.
Then
You
tell
don't
me
have to
my
answer zero
argument.
questions. I can talk just as much as you want, okay? I'm just trying to lay
Tell
down
me my
basic-
argument,
Why is he
Destiny.
freaking out so much? That's so weird.
It sounds like your argument was it is impossible for a person to have one set of ethics and not condemn another person in
No,
society
that's
for an
not my
action that would be
argument.
done.
My
Hold
argument.
on,
Right.
hold on. I'm gonna leave. Alex, make him shut the fuck up for 2 seconds.
You're
okay?
gonna
Yeah,
leave?
or else he's
Let me
gonna
finish.
run.
Okay, this was your argument, unless you're having an episode, in which case go get some antipsychotics. Your argument, because your questions to Kyla were, how can you believe that this
God, he said one thing, he got like the slightest bit of pushback, and then he's freaking out and saying he's gonna leave. Well, he's mad because he's out of his depth. He knows he said something stupid. Now he has to somehow fix it.
thing is okay in society, but you personally don't believe it? It seems to be a contradiction that you're saying
not
society
my
can have
argument.
one set of ethics. Shut the fuck up, you retarded
Then
fuck. Let me
fucking
finish
tell me my
fucking
argument, you
statement.
dumb blue-haired
I can't
gremlin.
even finish a fucking
What are you gonna do,
sentence.
run?
Finish one
What are you gonna do,
sentence.
run?
Literally restating.
I'm gonna mute all of you guys. Okay, let's just go one at a time.
Oh, that's embarrassing. Do you want to listen to what I just listened to? Okay. Hang on, let me go back a little bit here.
Fine for me, but not for thee in this case.
Conflicts with
Okay, can I take a stab at this? Okay.
Steve, hold on.
Okay, so it's just weird here, okay? I'll join you over here in the corner.
You ask 60,000 questions. You pivot and weasel away from
No, I
everything.
just ask you
Notice how
straight questions you
weaseled
won't
away?
answer.
Notice how you weaseled away from the conversation about your
Happy to have that
schizophrenia?
conversation too, but you accused me of
You
question
asked
begging.
90 Are you going to let me answer?
You
Keep
accused me.
interrupting me and building your narrative. Are you going to keep interrupting
You
me? and
can't
building
accuse
your
me of a
narrative?
fallacy, then not tell me the
Alex, I have an
fallacy.
actual relationship.
Tell me
Okay,
the
I forgot-
fallacy.
Okay, guys, go ahead.
Okay. Can I take a stab
Here
at
we
this?
go.
Okay. You can absolutely hold two different quote-unquote set of ethics. You're not holding contrary sets of ethics, though. What you can understand is you can have a system of morals that stands in contradiction to the law. For instance, a Catholic might believe that it's immoral to consume pornography, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a Catholic would prescribe that it changes the law in the country that they're in, right? In a way, you could read
That's not
this as
the
a
argument.
render unto Caesar. What?
That's
Hold on.
not
No. It doesn't seem to be the argument because you're conflating the law
It
and
doesn't
morality.
seem to be
So you
because
ask
it's not.
somebody,
Sorry.
when you ask consider to sin when somebody does something else, generally what is or isn't a sin is something that you're concerned with, and you're concerned with other people in your faith. Personally, I've never been in the business of, or seen other Christians at least, maybe for Muslims it's different, maybe for Jews it's different, maybe for other people it's different, is trying to evaluate. I'd never in my life, I took 4 years of fucking Catholic high school, 8 years of Catholic grade school, never once did we have a class we went through, what do Muslims do that's sinful? What do Jewish people do that's sinful? We've never done that before. We're concerned with what are sins in our society, the Christian church, the Catholic Church specifically. What does the Catechism say? What does your
Yeah.
preacher say?
Okay,
And
that's
then where
great,
it
but
starts and
repeat
stops.
my
So the
argument
question-
back to
hold
me.
on. Hold on.
You're arguing against a straw man.
No. You've traveled like 20,000 different.
I haven't
acres
traveled
of argument.
anywhere.
Well,
Repeat
you-
my
you covered
argument
so
back
long
As
to
you
me.
say it, it's true.
And then
Okay,
argue
okay,
against
okay,
that.
right.
I just want a
I'm-
good faith debate. Tell me my
I'm trying
argument.
to answer.
Then
You
tell
don't
me
have to
my
answer your
argument.
questions. I can talk just as much as you want, okay? I'm just trying to lay
Tell
down
me my
some basic-
argument, Destiny.
It sounds like your argument was it is impossible for a person to have one set of ethics and not condemn another person in
No,
society.
that's
for
not
an
my
action that would be
argument.
cut.
My argu-
Hold on,
Right.
hold on. I'm gonna leave Alex. Make him shut the fuck up for 2 seconds, okay?
Yeah,
Holy shit.
or else he's
Let
gonna
me-
run.
Okay, this was your argument, unless you're having an episode, in which case go get some antipsychotics. Your argument, because your questions to Kyla were, how can you believe that this thing is okay
Just wait.
in society, but you personally don't believe it? It seems to be a contradiction that you're saying
not
society
my
can have
argument.
one set of ethics. Shut
Just
the
wait
fuck
for it.
up, you retarded
Then
fuck. Let me
fucking
finish
tell me my
statement.
argument, you dumb
Go for
blue-haired
it, it's
gremlin.
good.
Finish your fucking
What are you gonna do,
sentence.
run?
Finish your
What are you gonna do,
I'm
run?
literally
I'm
restating.
gonna mute all of you guys. Okay, go on.
Okay, so can I just
You want to say something?
yeah.
Go for it.
Okay, I don't
Hang on. Oh wait, I think our stream died. Oh, we're back. Okay, good. Yeah. Do you want to go ahead?
well, okay, not having enough of the greater context of this man's absolute stupidity, I'm sorry to say. So the only point Destiny was trying to make there, and I am in no way consistently a Destiny fan,
Yeah.
was that he's a legal positivist like most people. In other words, the law and what is moral are non-identical, and you can actually have a moral system in place that, in theory, it won't often, but contravenes the law.
Okay.
This is possible.
This is very possible, and that'd be a very reasonable point. So here's the problem with this.
Yes.
The thing he is jumping in to run interference for
Okay.
is not that argument.
All right.
The question Kyla was asked is
Yeah.
from a Christian point of view. If someone is violating Christian ethics, are they engaging in something immoral? So not the question of whether or not the law can stand as a separate independent system from Christian ethics,
Yeah.
but whether or not Christian ethics sort of stops at the border and is, I guess, sort of like culturally nationalistic and does not interpret or judge other cultures, which is comical. I think it's that's like the thing it does the most.
Right, but what I'm saying is Destiny's
Yes.
weirdly not even arguing to that point.
But that's why it's like
Bizarre.
Well, that's why he's not. Well, this is why Andrew is saying, like, repeat my argument back to me, and why he's freaking out when he's asked to do so,
Yeah.
because he's made like a reasonable point in answer to a question that was not posed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, here's the thing. Outside of any of the immediate discussion here, what was buried in Destiny's, quotes, reasonable response that had
Yeah.
nothing to do with any of the questions posed was that all of us are ethical pluralists. Because our moral intuitions, this is another
Yes.
reason why Christianity can't fulfill this function, is because our moral intuitions are often contradictory. They don't often contravene the law, but for instance, like, can I just give you one example of this as a
Go
little
for it.
side thing, then I'll throw it back into the main discussion. But when you have a trolley problem scenario, right, classic thing where I'm sure everyone's heard of this, you have the option to either let the trolley kill 5 people. In other words, like, you are not murdering them, but you are letting them die. Or you flip a switch and you're able to murder 1 person.
Yes.
Most people who believe in a utilitarian ethos will flip the switch and have the trolley go and kill the 1 person instead. However, most people who aren't bluntly sociopaths will not push a man off a bridge with a heavy backpack on to block the path of the train, and as he gets mangled in the train's gears, the 5 people don't get killed.
Yeah.
So these are 2 instances where the ethics are completely contradictory, but there's a reaction such that our moral intuition allows for that contradictoriness. So there's no allowance for anything contradictory in what Kyla is saying either, right? Like, there's this idea that unless you start from X, which isn't even justified under any framework.
Oh, well, they're all just skirting. They're skirting the actual
They're skirting the actual issues, and so basically, it'd be nice if anyone actually spoke about moral pluralism. Anyone actually spoke about the way in which the law and morality aren't necessarily identical, but they could be and often are.
Yeah.
I guess we're not getting a lot of that in this. For someone who hasn't been watching it.
That would be a fair stab.
Yeah.
It's time. Let's let Destiny finish his point, then you can respond to it, Andrew.
Keep Andrew muted because he cannot stop doing
Jesus
this
Christ,
bad
I can't even finish a single fucking statement. Okay,
go ahead.
Yeah, so Andrew's line of questioning was trying to expose that Kyla had an inability to condemn anybody for sin, because it seemed like she held the double standard that society could have one set of ethics and she can have
God help me, I'm really rooting for the guy called Big Papa Fascist. I'm not even joking. This is where we're at. This is where we're at. The guy whose wife I called a parasite on Twitter, who I've called a moron multiple. He's. Oh, Brooks says Ambrose rules, by the way.
Thanks,
personal
Brooks.
one. Which is why Andrew was asking questions like, oh, well, do you think that this lifestyle is sinful? And then Kyle would say, well, no, I don't think so for me. Well, what about for other people? I don't judge Christians. That's why he went down the line of questioning of, is murder wrong? Is anything wrong? Because it seems like under your current system, whatever you do, you're unable to fundamentally say any particular action is wrong. And then Kyle tried to say something about utilitarianism, and then he said, well, how do you hold contrary sets of ethics? That was what the entire argument was. In my opinion, I think the reason why you're running into such a difficult to answer question here is because you're conflating what is the law or what is legally permissible with what is ethical. No, the Andrew's gonna say, no, I was talking about ethics the whole time, but that's not truly what we're talking about, because the idea just...
No, the question was literally just about ethics. It's wrong.
This is where I go into my personal opinion. The idea that as a Christian,
he's going
you
to
could
speed
condemn
talk, but I'm
somebody
not going to let him get off the
for
hook.
not following your Christian ethics, that's just a
He can
very
spurt
bizarre
talk all he
statement to me.
wants,
In my
but
personal
watch.
opinion,
One question.
from how I learned Christianity or Catholicism, usually when you're criticizing other people's
This diversion
inability
doesn't
to hold
work
to
with
the Ten
me.
Commandments, the
I've seen
Beatitudes,
this like
whatever
100
set of ethics we're
times.
talking about in terms of Christianity,
100
you're saying
times.
things like God
I'm gonna pin him
commands us to
down
do this,
right away.
God commands you to do that. These are the Beatitudes, these are the commandments, these are what the priest says, blah, 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 blah. So usually compelling somebody within a faith. So it's a very difficult question to ask from a religious point of view is, how do you condemn somebody else's morals that is outside of your faith? All you can do at that point is appeal to the law. And your ethics probably don't have to be exactly matching with what the law is. For example, in the case of smoke...
Whose? You should hijack the stream more? Yeah, you should, I agree. Save me a lot of work.
Smoking cigarettes or pornography. That's my...
Not yet.
Yeah, he doesn't do anything online yet, but he will at some
I
point.
will be very soon.
He will be very soon.
Okay, great. Now, to address my argument was really simple. I asked Kyla a simple question. I asked you the same thing.
What just happened?
So hang on, right? Because Alex muted me again. But that wasn't my question. It wasn't my argument, which is why I asked you in good faith to repeat my argument back to me. That way we could have the productive conversation. But what I asked specifically is, can you hold two different sets of moral values, and both of them can be true at the same exact time if they conflict with each other? Meaning, if and Kyla's
stated what I just
stop
said.
because you didn't answer this question. You didn't answer. You spurred and talked a lot, but you actually didn't answer this question. The question is, if one conflicting moral value structure says that it's okay to murder and another one does not, and you're a Christian, say it's not okay to murder, and you're, let's say, utilitarian who does, only one of those can be true. Yes or no, Destiny?
Yes.
Yes.
Problem,
Thank you.
As I restated, the problem was you're not holding, when we talk about murder, right? We're not really interested societally in the moral condemnation of murder.
Yeah,
what we're really looking for is what is the law.
Debate.
What?
Christians don't compel.
No. But how is the law determined? It's going to be a combination of what is moral, and it's going to be some, not like philosophical utilitarian calculus, but it's going to be some kind of calculus as to what is conducive to the well-being and wealth and health of society, apart from ethical concerns. That's exactly what's going to be taking place. Just saying we're talking about the domain of the law doesn't mean that it's no longer vulnerable to an ethical critique. The law can be subject to an ethical critique, in which case you would have, if you were defending the law, you would have two opposing ethical systems. You're swaying your head and it's making me nervous. Are you talking to me or are you marking students? Okay, just making sure.
For necessarily, societally speaking, another person,
Yes,
because
they
it's
do.
what God commands,
Yes, they
you
do.
say it's
They
because
do it
this
all
is
the time.
illegal.
See, this is why I'm afraid of doing this in front of
The
you.
law is going to be different than your particular moral thing. Now, there's going to be a lot in Christianity where your morals actually map onto the
Society's
law.
morality.
I'm sure you are.
Your morals in Christianity are going to map onto things that are very similar to the law. For instance,
Yeah,
don't
so it could be
steal.
overlap.
Yes,
Don't
squids.
steal.
Yeah,
Don't
there can be
steal,
overlap. Yeah.
I caught
Don't
squids.
steal and don't kill. Those
Yeah.
are two things. However, it's also a
Fortuitous
Christian
for a
commandment not to
cause.
be adulterous. That's actually not something that's illegal in the United States.
That's
So-
right.
Now, just because it's not illegal in the U.S. and just because it is illegal in the Christian world, is that a conflicting set of morals or
Yes.
ethics? No,
How is it not? Tell me how it's not.
because in
Hang on,
society,
wait.
we're talking about
It won't.
Apollo says, President cited that as naive, power will have much more to do with the law than any other considerations. This is the basis for identity politics.
World is it not a conflict?
I'm not responding. How do you respond to that? How would you respond to this?
His own individual seconds.
Me too, while I was reading it. This is naive. Power will have much more to do with the law than any other considerations. This is the basis for identity politics.
Okay. Not to get again too heavily into legal theory, but basically the law is either it fixes it once it's done, or it prevents it in the first place with the threat of penalties. And so basically it's either prophylactic or it fixes the thing in terms of it deals with damages, and often very poorly, and often in terms of eliminating negative externalities and basically paying people off. So it's not always great. Power has to do with what would happen at a foundational phase before the law was ever involved, either in the, either prophylactically in terms of maybe you shouldn't discriminate on these grounds, or here's precedent that means that if you did this thing it would be bad, or after the fact, wow, you got stabbed, that's horrible, here's what's going to happen now, right? So in general, power would be the ability to, for instance, influence how much precedent gets taken up in court, or influence the Constitution, or hell, even influence whether or not someone can have a court case. And so, the law doesn't have power. The people who are forming the law and using the law to the end of something else are the ones with power. So clearly there's something that happens before the law, and as the kind of, third estate, it's not exactly the source of power. I know, I realized that as I was saying it.
That's okay.
So there's legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government, right?
Yes.
That was ridiculous use of third estate. I said that, and then immediately my brain was like, how could you have done that?
What you're thinking of is like a third position.
I'm thinking of a third. No, we're not thinking of third position. That's a misuse as
okay,
well.
no, hang on,
This is
wait.
getting worse and worse. No, let me. So basically, the
Not
law is.
the third position,
I
a
know,
third
I'm teasing
position.
you. I'm teasing.
Oh my god.
Because
Okay.
you got me on third estate, so I got you on third position. But no, it's like, once you have legislated and executed the will of the government, the law is there to then adjudicate cases where people have deviated or whereby people need protections. And so, and also the idea is that legal power is orthogonal to state power, right? So in other words, you can't, that's the reason why you have issues with corrupt states, because if, the people who are legislating control the judiciary branch, they would have to tie their own hands behind their back in order to actually create any kind of civic freedom. So it's orthogonal to power, and it is used by people in power. It is not itself the origin of power. Okay. All right, there you go.
All right, thank you.
There you go.
I have fished 3 flounders in that time. This is so stupid. Okay.
I don't know. I can't.
Well, you're-
He's not
you're-
No,
interested.
you can, and I am. I've been more good faith in this debate than either of you.
I want to go out drinking tonight.
What's
I need
that?
a friend here. I need
All
to
right.
stay
Oh yeah, I
here.
know.
I'm
No,
drinking.
answer my
What are you doing
question,
tonight?
Destiny. How's it not a conflict?
I just told you because what you're
Does the third estate have more power? It would depend, right?
So right before the French Revolution, the third estate was considered those who were not part of the nobility nor the clergy. So it was the
No. Okay, so it would have more power than the writ of the law.
Yes, that's correct. It would not have more power than the capital L law, but it would.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just joking about popular fundamentals.
Sure you were. Sure.
I was just, populism's a bad thing.
Sure.
Moving on.
Sure.
Analyzing societally is the law. We don't have a societal set of ethics that we compel people to follow using some kind of like third-party punishment. We don't do that.
That
We
still
have the
wouldn't.
law.
That still wouldn't
It just
mean
means,
that there's
Andrew,
no
you've already
performative
said this. You've already said this.
Stop.
You've already said this.
Stop,
You've already
Erudite.
agreed to this.
Paula,
You've already
what's-
agreed to
Stop,
this.
Erudite.
Oh my God.
I know you want to spurg, but here's the thing.
that's-
That
they're
really has
actually just
nothing
like-
to do with whether or not these are contradictory
just like-
or contradictions to
I'm
each
trying to
other.
think of a
The ethical systems,
ableist
whether or
term for
not
this.
secularism
there's
legalizes
just,
X
like-
behavior and Christians don't believe it, only one of those systems can be true. So when I ask you if you're a
They're just
Christian, do you follow
freaking
Christian
out.
ethics, and you say yes, this means that you follow this format for an ethical system based on your religion. What secularists believe is going to necessarily, if it conflicts with that,
Okay,
be
so
immoral.
here's the
Tell me
thing.
how that's not
I
true.
have nothing ideologically in common with Andrew here, but Andrew's actually like putting forward a cogent position, which is a thing for me to say. And their response to like the slightest bit of pressure, like, hey, maybe you're not adequately representing the position, is just to start screaming and threatening to leave. Like, it's pathetic. Sunday, are you ever going over the Sam Cedar debate? Of course, just not right now. Stop asking me about the Sam Cedar debate. What?
Someday I can scream and attempt to leave if you want.
No,
I'm
you know,
upset.
no, you can't.
Aw.
No, because, no.
Just the food's too good here. I don't want to leave.
Exactly the... Did you order food, by the way?
I'm about to.
Okay.
True.
Because a secular
one for me?
society is the society itself is
Sure, what
not
do we get?
generally in the business. The state is not in the business of what's determining what is moral or immoral.
I'm asked a
It's
truth
just determining
claim.
legality.
Truth.
Can we say
the state is
re-redite? Is
agnostic
that a
on
thing
the
we're allowed
truth.
to
It doesn't make a
say?
statement about the truth.
I'm going to say
has
no.
nothing
I'm
to
going to
do
say
with
no,
it.
but I...
Doesn't matter if the state's
Hold on,
agnostic.
you didn't just hold on.
Yes.
Wait. You didn't respond to what I said. You just
I'm not
you
gonna
just
do
said
it.
Because it's
doesn't do
irrelevant.
anything.
It's
But I've
erroneous.
noted that
It
you
doesn't
like-
mean anything. It has nothing to do with
So
my
if you ever turn,
question.
you remember,
Question
I'm
is
going to show you with
irrelevant.
this.
You're asking.
How's my
you're
question
trying to-
irrelevant? It's the only
because
question.
You're trying to ask. You're trying to pretend that there are two conflicting set of ethics. The reason
There
why you're
are.
confused is because there's not. There's a set of ethics, and then there's the law. These things will conflict sometimes. It's
But-
not illegal to
The law
lie to
is a
somebody.
reflection
But hang
of
on, but
ethics.
Destiny,
It's a
Grace,
reflection
let me
of
finish.
society's
Grace,
ethics.
Grace, let me
Grace,
finish.
please
But
say no.
Destiny,
No, it's not.
you said
No,
only
it's
one.
not based on.
Grace, shut up.
Grace.
You said only one can be true. That's what you. Yeah, no, you
I
said that,
if there-
Destiny.
I said if there are two conflicting sets of ethics, generally one can be true.
Only
But in
one can be true.
society, It's not a set
Ugh.
of ethics. It's the
And Som Noir says, President Sunday, we're ever going to get back to Anti-Oedipus. Yes, we'll get back to Anti-Oedipus. Brooks, let me know when you want to do Anti-Oedipus. We'll do more of it. I'm getting sick of the complaints of you not being around enough. And now I have to deal with Ambrose not being around enough because people want him on now. Just kill me.
law.
No, it's not just the law. Law doesn't even necessarily have anything to do with ethics.
I'm sorry. In society, where does the government tell me where are my list of things that are moral or immoral in the United States of America?
They actually do. They draw on this very heavily, especially from the Bible, which the axiomatic for the entire United States
When you finish this
Constitution.
ramble, I'm going to restate the same question. Go ahead.
Okay, well, the
Oh, I'm
entire
crushing into a rock.
axiomatic principle of the United States Constitution is that all men are created equal. That is, well, the Declaration of Independence, right? That's axiomatic. So the thing is that if you're gonna state these,
Okay,
things,
fine. We
you're
won't do
gonna
more.
say,
We'll
hey,
editorialize.
listen,
Whatever it is, Brooks.
if you have two
Come on, do
conflicting
more of
sets
it.
of values, they can both have overlap. I would agree, but only one can be true. Is my point. And so, if only one is true, and you're a Christian, how can you follow the other?
I have to agree to. I've been stupid about this. I'm picking debate partners based. What did I just do here? I'm picking debate partners based on who I consider sort of like politically threatening, as opposed to who I can have a conversation with. And I think I should do the latter a little bit more. He's been asking me to talk for a while. I should probably do that at some point, because I could probably have an interesting conversation with Andrew. I should do that. This man sounds like Robert Downey Jr. He does a little bit, actually, now that you mention it.
other one and say it's not immoral. That makes no sense, bro.
Okay, I'm restating the question. Where do I find my set of ethics from the United States government?
The Declaration of Independence.
Declaration of
No,
Independence
that's
is
not
not
where.
even-
No,
that's not even
Grace.
part of
No,
the-
Grace.
No, that's where
You just ruined.
Where do I? So Destiny asked, where do I find my ethics for the United States government? And Grace chirps in, the Declaration of Independence.
Oh no.
ruined it, Grace. You just ruined it.
Natural law. That's where we get our ethics
That's
from.
not part of our
We
government.
hold.
I'm asking
God,
you,
this
Andrew,
guy.
No,
We
don't mute
hold-
Andrew. Don't mute Andrew. I'm asking you, where do I get my set of ethics from in the United States government? Where do I find it? Just
Where
let
do
me
I
look
get
it
my-
up online.
Natural law.
Is
It
it, do I
comes
go to the
from
Cornell?
natural law.
Oh my God! No, it gets
Natural
better. Where do I get my set of ethics from the United States government? It comes from natural law. From natural.
Natural
Natural
law.
law.
Is it the
Natural law.
God,
ethics.
shut up,
Hang on,
Grace.
hang on. Let's let Andrew answer the question.
Okay, so from a
Okay, Alex, to be clear, this is my question. Okay, very clear.
I'm gonna
We have the
answer
United
it.
States of America. We've got .gov websites. Where do I go to find the set of
in a
ethics that I need to follow in the United States?
secular society, the ethics are drawn from whatever the secularists broadly agree the ethics are.
Says who?
How else could it work?
How else does it work? How it works is exactly how it works today. Everybody has their own set of ethics. The only thing that binds us
What?
is the law.
That's what I just
That's
said.
it.
But the
bro.
law is
I
based
literally
on
just said.
Everyone has their own set of ethics. The only thing that binds us is the law. But he's just talking about opinion there. The nature of ethics is that it can't, like, ethics can't really be individual in that way. You can adhere to an ethical system, but
Okay.
to be actualized, yeah?
So there's also a difference between ethical pluralism and ethical relativism, right? So, in other words, we can allow for the existence of universal principles, and then for there to be particulars that would massively deviate based on those principles. So, like, what does that mean, right? When you're dealing with utilitarianism, for instance, like whatever we think will give us the greatest net utility, whether that's happiness or cookies, we can differ in terms of how we construe that. And then, of course, we'll follow that through in a different way. People think because there can be ethical disagreement, or even in one person, you can have a Kantian view one moment and a utilitarian view the next moment, that somehow that means it's just a subjective opinion bound by these external institutions. It's of course not. An individual can have perfectly consistent, not consistent ethics, but can have perfectly coherent ethics, whereby they select different ethical systems at different times. Likewise, you can have one ethical system that, in its particular implementations, can be radically different and even contradictory. None of this reduces us to relativism. None of this assumes that everything is just subjective. Like, people make that mistake, and it's so frustrating to see. Because it's like, 101, this is not how ethics operates. Anyway, that's my rant about that, because it's a pet peeve. Yeah.
What'd you get me?
I haven't gotten it yet. I was ranting about ethics.
Oh!
I got you utilitarian spaghetti. So what that means is I'll be happier eating it, so I'm gonna have it all. Because I can achieve levels of happiness you can't.
I wanted a Pokeball.
The serotonin in my brain. Oh, no, that's... We had a rice bowl earlier.
Get, I like salmon on them. You don't want Poke now? How about udon? Ugh. Yeah, it looks like worms, I agree.
I just said that.
Fine. Then there's no conflict.
agree.
There is a
We solved
conflict.
everything.
There
No,
is a
what
conflict,
conflict?
so I'm going to
What
tell
is
you
The law is
again
based on a set of
because you have
ethics.
diverted. Shut up, Grace. Because you have diverted
No,
multiple
you guys can't
times.
just keep telling me not
Well,
to talk.
but let us finish.
Yeah,
I let
sure.
you and Erudite go.
You've been going.
I
Why
let you
not
and
me?
Erudite
You
go.
want
Let me
them to
finish.
tell you to shut
You
up.
So
like it.
anyway-
It's turning you on every time he tells
Yeah,
you to shut
so
up. you stupid
anyway-
No,
fucking
because you're
child.
wrong.
Anyway,
Shit.
back to
Right,
this.
you're lying
You're so
woman.
stupid, Greg. You're so dumb and submissive.
You don't think laws are based in ethics? You don't think American
just made
legal
something so
tradition
I think
is
they don't
based in
have to
natural
be.
law?
You
We
don't
hold these
have to be
truths to be
based.
self-evident.
You
Destiny, you're a
little
Catholic.
breed of
You
a
know-
woman. You're
Oh,
so
God.
stupid and
Way to
dumb.
you know
divert
what
it,
natural
Grace.
law is.
You're
You're
a
a Catholic.
dumb
Do you know
fuck.
what natural law is?
Destiny,
You know what
you're not
natural
go-
law is.
you're not- you're
I
not
know
going
what
far
natural law
enough.
is.
You guys
Just
go far
diverted
enough.
the whole thing.
I'm not letting you get away with
So-
saying.
Thank you, Oren, for the $5. I'm going to steal the Declaration of Independence. Don't. That's where natural law is. I guess.
You'll destroy the world.
Thank you, Naomi Chance, for the $2 utilitarian dollars. We're not utilitarians here, so thank you. But that will immediately go
Hey,
towards...
speak for yourself. No, I'm not. I'm a pragmatist.
Okay, whatever, libcuck.
That laws are not based on a set of ethics
You need
that
to be
comes
in
from
the
the
Okay, what
Cooking
ethic are you
right
violating by
You
stopping at a
guys
stop
are
sign, Grace?
Clip is gonna be
Grace,
so
Grace,
bad, Destiny.
Grace.
I'm gonna weaponize this
What
against you.
what ethics are you violating by not stopping at a stop sign?
That's
Natural
not-
law is
that's
stored
not-
in
You're not
testicles,
violating
this is
ethics.
true.
You're violating traffic.
Right,
laws.
you fucking idiot.
Yeah, traffic
Actually,
laws
it
are
is
based
pretty
on. Traffic
Oh, fuck, you're right!
No, it is.
It is!
It is. But this is not bullshit. So it's in his generation of animals. I believe that that's where the form of the the substance of the being comes from. It's either in his metaphysics or generation of animals.
you got it backwards.
Oh.
So, yeah, so...
No, but he gives a contradictory account in each.
Does he?
Yes, one he says is one, and one he says is the other, and they contradict. Let
Okay.
me zip it on this, and I'll tell you about
Zip
the
it on that.
cider.
Let's return to that.
We'll return to it.
But my understanding is that the female gives the substance.
And the male gives the form.
form.
But the problem is he
And
contradicts
the
that in
enervating
various...
force and stuff.
His problem, though, is that if a male and a female are both fully persons under God,
Yes.
basically, more or less, which is...
Oh, he wouldn't have sent them out. Are you kidding?
No,
He's got Big Papa. It's called Big Papa Fascist.
What I'm trying to say is, like, the scholastic adaptation would add in God. So if males and females were full persons, then what's going on is that each has to have both form and substance. But if one lends the form and the other lends the substance, and if the being comes out imperfectly, it's a female, then clearly there's something inferior going on. But then it has to be sort of inferior in form only, not in substance. They have to be in substance identical, otherwise they wouldn't both be persons. So then, but then he gets into sort of this weird contradiction where he says, but if the female provides if the female provides the substance, that doesn't make any sense because this is the inferior form. You see what I mean?
Yes.
And the inferior, so it just gets like, how could the female provide the substance? So it just, there's a whole thing. I probably butchered it. Let's get back to it later.
You probably less than me, but somebody asked, what is Sunday's ethical model? It's right here.
Yeah.
What could be more ethical than this?
Oh my god, it's so embarrassing.
It's a duck nana.
I know, it's embarrassing.
This is beautiful.
It's embarrassing.
Millions of years. Billions of years.
I'm actually cringing.
Do you realize how many organisms lived and died to produce this?
Ugh. Many.
Hegel wrote to produce this. Without Hegel, there is no duck nana.
You can tell him I'm refusing to look at you, so.
You can't, but would you look at this?
No, I will not.
It's beautiful.
This is getting extremely weird.
It's so adorable. You can't look at its innocence.
Stop it.
It's so cute. Touch the duck nana. Touch it.
I'm not touching it.
Touch it.
Fuck away from me.
Oh. Can't believe I ever went out with you. Okay.
Talking about this, we're not. Our laws against pedophilia. Listen.
Unreal.
Our laws against pedophilia.
What category is
based
it
on
going to be in?
ethics.
It's not soup. It's not noodles.
No, but they're like kind of shitty and racist. They're like Chinese, Vietnamese, Indian.
Pho.
Pho. Like as a category.
Yeah.
Yes.
Our laws against pedophilia based on
Yes,
ethics.
some laws are based
What
on
ethics?
ethics, but they don't
What
have to be.
ethics?
Wait, hang on.
Yes,
Laws against pedophilia are basically only based on ethics, not utility. Like, it's kind of... They're only based on ethics. Like, you could... same with, like, child labor. You could, like, run a society very efficiently and very, like, generate a lot of wealth putting children in the mines and putting children in the brothels and whatnot. Yeah, that's only ethical. That's not utilitarian. Because if you have a utilitarianism that's not guided by any like higher ethics, then you basically just have economics. Pretty much. Like what else is like you have to have the principle that there is a good that is apart from the utilitarian for the utilitarianism to be directed towards something other than simply the economic aggrandizement, right?
Oversimplifications of both a Kantian and a utilitarian position, though, make it such that neither are actually tenable for anyone to use ever. And so a utilitarian would absolutely be opposed to things that were considered like pretty universally morally evil.
But I don't know that's true.
But let me
like the Amilas thing, right? Go on, sorry.
But so in other words, yeah, if you're a Bentham-style utilitarian who literally used utilitarianism to promote like systems of eugenics where whole groups of people were wiped out in order to improve net happiness, that's horrific. And that's Bentham advocated for this kind of thing, and it actually led to the kind of population reform. Bentham did not do it. He did not instantiate it. He wasn't like in a position of political power to do anything, but he advocated for a kind of utilitarianism that would have you wipe out people in order to increase net happiness. So it's horrific. Yeah. So if you're not tempering utilitarianism with something like rural utilitarianism, whereby there's certain moral principles you can't violate because it would be so misery-inducing on such an extreme scale for a certain group of people, or because anybody who was raised to be virtuous would find it so repulsive it would give them an infinite sense of misery, then, that's how that system actually works. And so usually things that are vicious are miserable for people who are raised effectively. Like, again, remember Mill says like utilitarianism is not a doctrine of the swine.
Right.
It's not the same as hedonism. It's not like whatever makes you happiest.
Yeah.
And he gets a bit elitist and strange with this because he'll talk about, well,
I think what's kind of happening there is
higher pleasures,
yeah.
right? Which come from virtuous behavior, so-called, and therefore you would, by dint of that...
There's a layering, though. So you
not
have,
like forms of evil like
right.
pedophilia, right? Like
but like,
yeah.
Under that view, though, like, you have sort of a virtue ethics that is layered over top of utilitarian ethics. So all things being equal, utilitarian calculus. But the utilitarian calculus is oriented towards virtuous ends, supposedly.
Well, that's what Mill is saying. And Mill is
Yeah.
saying that, in fact, to even assume that it's separable from that is making a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
That, in fact, it not being a doctrine of the swine and it not being a hedonistic thing, which is a ridiculous thing for him to scream in a public lecture, but that's what he did, makes it something that you have to include a kind of virtue ethics frame to make sense of it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So Siri says there are utilitarian arguments against child labor and pedophilia. Yeah, but the problem is they're going to be...
But they're bad forms of utilitarianism.
Well, not insofar as they're against child labor and pedophilia, but the...
Oh, sorry.
No, you were thinking of the reverse.
Yeah.
But they're not going to only be utilitarian arguments, though. Because the problem there is that at that point it becomes a trivial case of literally, does allowing it or disallowing it produce more utility for the greatest number? And it's not... You don't arrive at, for example, we will not permit child labor or pedophilia dogmatically via utilitarian calculus. That's the crucial point.
No, but the point is that there's certain forms of evil that are so anathema to people.
But that's not arrived at utilitarianly, right?
Well, no, but if you're thinking in terms of consequence, that engaging in them or allowing for them will decrease the good so horrifically in so many cases that they could never be allowed for, and those things also correspond to those things that are considered evil under other systems.
Yeah, but that's
right?
the O'Mealis case. So it's I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like you sacrifice a child to produce like happiness in the broader society or whatever.
Yeah, that actually there's
but there's going to be a person who
there's
walks
an
away,
interesting
like,
there's an
just laughs
interesting
and walks away from
the
it.
failures of utilitarianism is actually really interesting, covered by Ursula Le Guin.
But that's what I'm referring to, actually.
Yeah, and then what's the name of that?
O'Mealis.
Oh yeah.
The man who walked away from O'Mealis.
Yeah, exactly. The Omelas thing.
Yeah, Omelas or however you pronounce it.
I guaranteed you're pronouncing it more correctly than me, because the joke is I
Omelas?
never
Omelas
pronounce
sounds
anything
better.
correctly. Yeah, so in other words, like you're allowing a child to experience like unfathomable horrors, and then the population's kind of A-okay because of it.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be acceptable. But then again, like, there's extreme forms of Kantianism that shouldn't be acceptable. One must never lie. Okay, so I'm rescuing a prisoner of war and making sure that they're, like, safe in my house, and then I have to, like, tell, the state police that I'm actually, like, keeping them, and then have the police take them away? Like, it's that kind of thing, right?
Well, serious, why that shouldn't be acceptable is because then you run into arguments where you leave children to burn in burning buildings because of statistics.
Do they have to be based on
Then
something?
tell me what the
Laws
ethical
against
system for
pedophilia.
stopping at a stop
What is
sign
that
is.
based on?
Grace, stop
What is that
spurging.
based on?
Stop
I'm talking
spurging.
about moral laws. I'm talking about laws
Grace,
that are
you
based
have
on
to
morality.
stop
Laws are a
spurging.
set of
Concept of
ethics.
evil?
Grace.
Hang on.
Spurging all fucking night.
Yes?
I'd say utilitarian does have a concept of evil, and I framed it as evil for the sake of making a rhetorical point, but to answer August, the concept they would have of evil would be something whose utility was so negative, like so net negative in every instance where it surfaced, that no reasonable person would ever want to pursue it or engage with it. Like, that would be something like that.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
So Robin Page says, help me out here. Make a utilitarian argument against child labor and pedophilia. That said, I can get behind any argument against child labor and pedophilia. The problem, though, is that if the argument is utilitarian, then the basis of it is sort of trivial. The facts of the world at this particular instant mean that there is a diminishment of utility rather than a maximization of it when you allow these things to take place. But what if that wasn't the case? What if somebody found a way to wrangle these things to produce utility?
But what kind of utility? That matters.
Well, what if it's the best kind of utility, but the proof is the best kind of utility is maximized sort of farther down the chain?
What I would say, okay, so first of all, let's talk, because when we're talking about utility, there's a demandingness around proximal versus distal factors, right? Because it's like, oh no, what if I did this one thing and the butterfly effect means that, like, 20 actions down the road, something horrible happens as a result of it. So there's an element of moral luck that people talk about in relation to utilitarianism.
Well, what about this?
But let me just say,
go on.
so, but when we talk about what the best thing is, generally, there's an Aristotelian element lurking in the background. What is best for its own sake, isn't best in reference to something else. And so you can never have money making or
True.
greed be a utilitarian goal. It would always have to be something like happiness in a true, deep, eudaimonic sense. It'd have to be something like that.
Hey,
right?
eudaimonia, that's you. Sorry, go on.
Yay. So connection. So that's what it would have to be. So the idea that you could ever get eudaimonia out of something like child labor, I mean, it seems logically impossible, right?
Well, because you already have to have a predilection against child labor to care to do so in the first place.
Yeah, but nothing you could get from child labor wouldn't be just merely instrumentally valuable. You wouldn't get like a deep sense of fulfillment and joy from child labor. You would get a bunch of money.
Sure, but with that
just because it has utility doesn't mean that utilitarianism will accept it.
Oh, I agree.
It accepts only things that are good in themselves.
But you go a step later though. So that bunch of money now is used to create a really high-end school that produces brilliant people that could not have existed without that money. So now you have a problem. Now you have some kind of compensating good on this end. You have these brilliant superhuman beings being produced by this school that is funded, it's maybe only capable of being funded because of the use of child
fair
labor.
enough. But what I'm saying is that some things are so morally intolerable in the first place that to even countenance them could never make up for the results, no matter how grand they were down the chain. That's what you might say in response to that. I
agree with you.
Yeah.
But you would not say so on the basis of utilitarian calculus. You would be deploying something else. Because you can have both.
You would have to make some argument along the lines of like the net utility being so negative that no positive utility down the line could possibly make up for it.
If that's the case, that's the trick. So utilitarian calculus will involve at a critical juncture in a black box the if that's the case.
But the if that's the case is pending the moral judgment of the individual engaging in the calculus.
Sure, but that itself is not going to be informed prior to the calculus. Or sorry, that itself is going to be informed prior to the calculus.
But again, none of this is necessarily incommensurate with utilitarianism.
No, it's not. But the crucial point, though, is that it's perfectly commensurate with utilitarianism. Yeah. But the point that like makes you decry those in particular as ills is not going to be the product of utilitarian calculus.
No, definitely not.
It could be incidentally, but when we're talking about these as evils in advance of doing the utilitarian calculus, we're not using a utilitarian calculus to arrive at them.
But a utilitarian never said that you didn't have to determine in advance on what counted as maximal net utility. Of course you did. You have to determine that the good you're going for is happiness.
Yeah.
Or is safety or some other virtue, right? So you have to have a concept of virtue that's foundational to even engage responsibly as utilitarian. People make the mistake that utilitarianism is somehow like a first-order ethical system, when in many ways it's not.
I have to pee. You want to talk to chat?
Sure, I'll talk to chat. I'll put it up on my... I have yet to face reveal, so I'll put this... I can't talk there. Because I've yet to... Okay. Hey, guys. What's an omela? That's a good question. I'm trying to think what an omela is. Let's see. What is an omela? What is an omela? Is Omelas the name of the... It's a city name. The city is named Omelas. So let's see what that means if we translate it. I actually haven't read that short story. We just use it as a case study when we're talking about, okay, what's the worst thing you could do to somebody under like the thinnest, laziest conception of utilitarianism. So like full disclosure, I did not know that it referred to the actual city itself, named Omelas. Okay. Yeah. All right. Hi, Titan. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, my chat is a little bit delayed. What I hear is utilitarianism is not pragmatism. That's correct. It's a Canadian omelet. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it's a city. Child torture, slave city. Exactly.
No, it's absolutely not pragmatism or pragmaticism. Because basically, we're looking at the difference between examining something via focusing on its causal effects versus looking at something in terms of its value based on what might happen if you do something. So both are based in thinking about the effect part of cause and effects, but one is analyzing what's actually happened, and one is trying to come up with a better outcome. So, yeah, they're not quite the same. Okay, so McGillicuddy, could you weigh it such that extreme suffering weighs worse than moderate happiness? Everyone knows utilitarianism is from Thanos. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and so again, like there's like absurdities.
The strongest wills. Excuse me.
know.
Speaking of which, did you actually pick out our food yet?
No, I didn't. I was too busy talking to chat.
Oh my god.
Look up Brad Hooker's rule consequentialism and tell me what you think.
Okay. Just look up the whole thing. Okay.
No, but actually, look up Brad Hooker's version.
The aptly named Brad Hooker's.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Rural consequentialism.
Rural consequentialism.
R-U-L-E.
I know what rural consequentialism is.
Contra consequentialism. It sounds like a really bad.
I've watched Vosh. I know what rural consequentialism is. Hooker's conception of rural consequentialism demands that we adhere to the moral code whose internalization by the overwhelming majority of people would lead to the best overall consequences. That's so stupid.
It isn't. The premise is very, very hard to justify, and he does a snag decent job at it. It just takes him a long time. It's kind of the biting the bullet around.
But how do you justify this democratic impulse? Like, why would it matter if the overwhelming majority of people believe it would lead to the best overall consequences? Why should I give a damn what the overall majority of people think?
Because that's what's going to increase net utility.
But how have you determined this? What if the overall
you can't there's an epistemic arrogance in the position. Like I'm not saying I believe in this stance or that I support this. What I'm saying is that this is an instance of somebody grappling with this, right?
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, like I'm not going to justify rural consequentialism because I think there's huge issues with it, and it does do a bit of like Kant's faculty thing, where it's like, oh no, we all have the faculty of reason in common. So we'll just appeal to that faculty of reason. It'll be fine. All right, I'm gonna actually order because I'm hangry at this point.
Me too.
All right, okay, you're on.
Sorry.
Grace, we were arguing. Grace, we were arguing. You're spurging. You need to calm down.
You just call people. No, respond to my point.
I'm trying to, but you won't shut up.
Moral laws that are based in morality, like a law against pedophilia, is based in an ethical reasoning that comes from natural law.
Some laws.
Does it not?
Some laws.
Well, laws that are based around a moral code.
So
right?
some
like
laws.
Is wrong or not.
Repeat back the word "some laws," so I know that you heard what I said.
Okay, yes, some laws are arbitrary, but there are laws.
Then
that are
your point's defeated.
Enforced.
Now just sit there.
No. Laws
Grace,
are
this is the
based
world
on
that
a
you
set
want.
of ethics.
They must be going through hell.
Who?
The audience.
Probably.
Dealing with the acoustics is probably hell right now.
Probably. Hey, but if we're only like 35 away, I think, from being at 100, and then we skip immediately to the theory. So, guys, it's in your hands. Sirius says, what exactly is so stupid about this? This is similar to my thinking. I wouldn't call it rule consequentialism, though. I just think it's equivalent to any other kind of utilitarianism. Well, the problem is the epistemological arrogance that Ambrose was just referring to, in that there is sort of an assertion here that the internalization... that's an additional problem in terms of like an epistemic like assumption that we can make. But there's another assumption here that the internalization by the overwhelming majority has any connection to what has the best overall consequences, and that strikes me as having no force whatsoever. For one thing, it is not the overwhelming majority of people's opinion that adhering to that principle would produce the best overall consequences. It sort of defeats itself pretty quickly. Maybe this is an inadequate description of it, but as given, since that's what I'm responding to and that's what you're defending, it does not seem to hold water. It needs, no, it doesn't hold water at all.
Is what you want.
What else are laws based on? Just random choice? People should drive safely.
It turns out
They can be.
The laws can be based on random choice. That's literally what the word arbitrary means.
They can be.
People should drive safely. People should respect other people's rights to safety. That's a code of ethics that says we should respect other people.
Grace, you are correct, and that law is generally downstream from morality.
That's not terrible,
But it's still
actually. How much is that?
distinctly different from morality.
24?
Yes.
What is in the code? What is codified
This
in
is
the law
correct, yes.
is not necessarily an ethic or a
Do it.
moral, but it comes from ethics or morals.
for it.
That is correct, right?
Well, morality is the philosophical.
Debate Vosh, I already have.
It's philosophy, but laws are the.
You want to debate Vosh?
Practical.
No, you'd win.
Application
Not fair.
of
Yes, but the
Sometimes.
difference is that
Sometimes.
laws, right? In a society full of people,
I need
not everybody
to.
has to agree
My
on
friendship
what's
with
morally
Vosh has
right.
political
We do
value,
have to agree
and
on
you would
the law.
destroy
That's
that
the
by
difference.
just
so the law
destroying
is
his
hopefully
self-esteem
an
forever.
abstraction, collectively,
Exactly.
of all the different moralities and ethics that we have in the
We
United
like
States,
Vosh.
or in your
But
state,
actually,
or in
like,
your city.
Against
law that wouldn't
against all our better
summarize
judgment,
the
we
stop
like
sign
Vosh.
saying it's wrong to disrespect other people's safety.
Is it
by
saying it's
blowing up
wrong?
this
No.
stop
It's not so much. It's not so much
It
that
is
the law.
based on an
It's not
ethical
so much that the law won't reflect.
Yes, there's a
any
thing here.
morality.
I don't know what it
It's that
is,
the
but
law
it's a
won't reflect
thing, and I
all
got it.
morality.
But it
For
doesn't have
instance, all
to.
of
You
us-
can have a law that says headhunting
What?
is legal. Does that reflect
great.
morality?
That's great.
Say again?
All of us.
No,
who
I'm.
think
That's
of
my.
things
I'm
that are-
backing
Reg.
your
I
point,
don't-
Dustin.
I know, but
That's
I'm,
not
hold on.
true.
It is
All
true.
right,
Point out a
well,
law
crafting
that has
fishing
no
game.
There are
moral.
all.
factors.
Stop. I don't know why he said that. That's not my point. Okay, hold on.
Oh my
What I'm
God,
saying
he's
is that
freaking
all
out so
laws
much.
Can probably be traced back to some moral idea because
This
that's
is a
kind of
new
where law
fishing game. It
comes
just
from.
came
It's
out.
protection for society,
Sometimes
right?
they can.
However,
No, I'm not.
all moral ideas lead to laws.
Sometimes
right?
laws
So
are
you're
just
pulling
based
Are you saying I'm
around,
playing it badly? I just ran into a
basically
rock, and my
collectively,
ship is now on fire. As
collective
I said
enforcement
that.
for behavior
It's
that
not
you like.
illegal.
It doesn't even
It's
have to
very
be moral
Calling
necessarily.
your mom a cunt or lying to a friend or cheating
lighthouse
on a partner. These are all
towers
things that we
above.
would probably say are
Waves
immoral.
crash
Calling somebody a
endlessly
racial
against
slur.
the
These are all things that
perilous
are
rocks
immoral,
below.
but we wouldn't necessarily say they're
All
illegal,
creatures,
right? So
human
they're going to
or
be more moral
otherwise,
things.
would have their
moral things. And the
brittle
reason why-
bodies broken and
Yeah,
thrown at
so
its feet.
All of us in the United States have
The
tons of different
lighthouse
moral
has
systems,
feet,
but we can only
apparently.
have one legal
You
system.
ponder the
So we
intrinsic
all have
power
to
of
make
the
it illegal,
structure,
which
a
means
vast
all of us are
column
gonna
of
have things
stone
morally
shouldering the
that we wish could be
responsibility
illegal,
of
but they can't
countless
because it's not conflicts with
lives.
somebody else's morals.
How
That's why in
long
the
will
United
it
States we have
stand? How long
two
until it
conflicting
decays
sets of
into
ethics,
ruin,
because
its
the
purpose
law is a
exhausted?
collection of the aggregate of our moral feelings, and it
Yeah.
doesn't
The
have to
lighthouse
necessarily map
towers
one-to-one
above.
with our personal set of ethics.
I
That's why there are
agree.
two
Well, hang on,
there's not.
Grace. Though,
Okay.
but
I
that
agree, but
wasn't.
you-
But hang on, Grace. That actually isn't
No,
the
let me
point.
respond now.
That's
Let me
not
respond.
the
No,
Grace.
don't just
You're just
budge
gonna
in. Shut the
bury
fuck up,
yourself,
Andrew.
Grace.
Shut the fuck up.
You're
Let
gonna
me
bury
respond,
yourself. You're too
okay?
stupid for this
No,
conversation.
I'm agreeing with him. What Erudite
You
was
don't even
saying
know what
was
you're
that
talking about.
She was saying you can have a code of ethics.
Here you go.
that
Get
is
destroyed,
different
Grace.
from another code of ethics.
Get destroyed.
And yet you
Okay, hang on. Sirius is replying. Also, if I care about moral rights, what if my adherence to a moral right ultimately undermines the propagation of that right?
That would be a tragic and unintended consequence of your adherence.
Take it up with God, basically.
I
if
guess
it's a
tragic
moral
and
right.
Unintended consequence means take it up with God, but fair enough.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that Old Testament God does like the smell of burning flesh.
I mean, so do we.
Does like it when you hew an animal in twain.
I mean, have you
So
tasted?
I read that. It was the most hilarious thing I've ever read.
I mean, have you tasted burning flesh? It's pretty good.
No, I don't think he means like he likes good cooking. I think he wants like burning fresh, rotting flesh.
Oh, you're talking to a chatter. Okay, sorry, Sirius.
you can be the thing that one person is doing is
What
not
a
immoral.
fucking idiot.
That's not true. If somebody has a
Apparently.
Catholic code of ethics and they compare it to the legal system in America,
okay, I'm used to
they
it.
would not say that if somebody does something
Wasn't
illegal,
talking to you.
or sorry, legal in America that is
this
immoral
fucking
to them,
woman, dude.
that's okay. She
We
was
have
saying
like
that's okay.
I could pin this guy
Her morality
down and
only
destroy
applies to
him on this
herself.
in minutes,
Sure, no,
and
yes,
she
because
won't
the difference
shut
is going
up.
to be is that she's going to have a moral system. Let's say hypothetically she has a moral system that says that eating pork is not okay, right? And by the way, this is how
Look at the
real
name.
world people practice their
won't.
morals, right? Go
By the
talk to
way,
Jewish people,
Oh my
I bet
God.
you like
They
20
might say,
bucks
"I
that
don't
That's like a
Destiny,
game
when he
name.
puts
They're
this
not
on
gonna
his
say,
channel,
"I think
he
you're a
puts it
sinner
up as
because you don't
team
eat pork."
debate,
They're just gonna
even
say,
though it's
"I'm
not a
gonna
team
take my
debate.
partake in your pork eating with you, as long as you're not
Garen
violating
fucking
the
T it.
collective
How do you manage to only respond to me when I'm responding to a chatter? Because I'm getting you at your weakest because I fear you.
ethics, our law system.
Clip
We don't
this.
have our
Clip
own
this
individual
prediction.
set of ethics. One man might say, "I don't eat pork."
This whole
I don't
thing is
partake in
cringy. I'm
masturbation,"
talking
and
into a
another man might say, "I
webcam
do
for a
that."
job,
If they're
okay?
not in the same moral
I think
collective
just-
sphere,
I
they don't
think
have the same
love
religious
crafting
belief. He's not going to say,
fishing
"Wow, I think
is
you're living a life of sin." He's going to say, like, "Oof, you
But
live
it's
like
fun.
you have a totally
But
different set
eating
ethics in it.
the thing about eating pork is not a moral law. That's about like religious cleanliness. That's not a
Skin.
moral thing.
Okay,
Whereas
hold on, Grace,
partaking in pornography is
Grace,
it's a
that's fine,
religious
but
law.
replace
It's
it,
a
Grace.
religious
Grace,
law.
you're
So if
missing-
somebody's of a
Yeah,
different
don't blame
religion,
me
of
for
course you wouldn't
anything
expect them
Erudite
to.
got a
You're
pass
missing-
on.
you're missing-
Grace
Following
won't
the
shut
religious
up.
law.
Then
She
ignore the
literally
pork thing.
cannot
I don't
shut
think
her
it's
mouth.
fine.
Okay,
Replace
hang
it
on.
literally
If she was
anything.
smart, she would shut the
Treating
fuck
yourself
up.
Daedalus.
Daedalus says, I like the smell of burning flesh. That's why I bought a grill.
That's what you wanted to read out?
Yeah, his dad joke. It's awesome. I thought it was hilarious.
Of course you did, because you're a dad.
I'm not a dad. Holy shit! Why are you telling everyone this?
You're a dad on the inside.
I'm not. Yeah, I am. It's true. It's true. I'm everyone's gay dad.
You are everyone's gay dad.
I know I am.
But
Disrespectfully.
she's not
But what I'm
smart.
saying is that like somebody might say, I'm not going to judge them as immoral because they're from a totally different religious system.
You're a
As long as they
dilf.
follow the law.
I was
that's
destroying the
fine.
Thank you so
gremlin,
much.
but this bitch won't shut up. Now,
Disgusts
Destiny,
me.
back to this though. My point wasn't whether or not you could have a different set of laws between Group A and
Smell of
Group B.
burning flesh is never
But if you're
disappointing.
part of
Grilled
Group
pill,
B's
no
ethical
beer.
system,
Yeah, I agree.
then only that ethical system for you can be true. That's the point. So if you have a conflict between Christian ethics and whatever's going on in secular society, only one of those can be true. You already admitted that only one of those can be true. So if that's true, then you have to operate from the true one, right?
True,
Or
true.
you should.
That's true, but just because there's a conflict there, if part of your beliefs is wait, hold on, real quick. I'm sorry, I'm not done.
Watch
Just because
this.
there's a conflict there
He's not
doesn't
gonna say
mean that
anything.
it
He literally
needs
says
to be
nothing when he
reconciled.
talks.
For
It's
instance,
Doesn't need to be
a good
reconciled,
Christian
huh?
probably would say you ought to go to church
Big
every
brain
single
take.
Sunday. That's not mandated by
It's
the
a
government,
religious law,
right?
not a moral
And
law.
there goes
It's a
Grace.
religious law.
We
No,
just
no,
had him
religious law.
again, and
Let's
she
let-
fucked it up.
Let's let Destiny finish.
Okay,
Go ahead.
right. But maybe in the wider government, people aren't mandated to go to church, right? Just because you might feel that way personally doesn't mean you think you need to compel all of society to feel that way. Now, if somebody says, what's the true rule? What should everybody do? Well, you wouldn't even say everybody should do this moral thing. What you would say is everybody should believe in the same moral truth that I do, and then
Right.
from there would stem the moral
Thank you. Okay, so since we've conceded that this is true, then when I ask Kyla which thing is true, pornography as being moral, or your Christian
Is it my
ethics saying
destiny
that
to
that's
live and die a
immoral,
life of
only
blonde
one
for-
can
yes,
be
it
true,
is.
she should answer
Blonde
that
fragility,
her
yes, it is.
purview
Exactly
for
that.
Christianity is
That's from the
true.
Barbie
Right,
Yeah, 'cause
Destiny?
I'm-
No, you're so fucking stupid.
Oh, it's the Barbie song.
I don't even
Yeah.
know
I'll
how
break
you
this down.
just
I'll break this
responded
down.
with
I'll break
that.
this down.
This is
Go
great.
ahead. Are you gonna
My
just
brain.
keep whinging
Go
out?
ahead,
It's
go ahead.
endless.
Okay. If
It's
the
happening.
law, if the government said I personally had to make
That's the
pornography,
debate,
there
ladies
would
and
be a
gentlemen.
conflict
Wrecked.
here, because I might be
Wrecked.
personally opposed to it for religious reasons.
Just
But
wanna read
it
Moby
is
Dick
not
again.
opposed to my religious system. For the system,
You haven't read
that
Moby Dick,
people
have you?
can do
Well, Destiny just
pornography
agreed
at
with
will.
that.
You've been
And I don't
obsessing
think the way it's
over
strongly
me reading
for
Moby Dick
pornography
and
for
reading Moby Dick
non-Christians
while eating
is bad or
calamari,
good.
which is
This
extremely
isn't
unpleasant as a thought,
conflicting
Debate's
even though
done.
it's whale.
as you
So,
would
yeah.
agree,
That
there
makes
are
no sense
some
at all.
religious
Now watch
moral
this.
laws
When
that
she's
will
all
be
done
true
spurging
for us
eventually.
as religious people
Screaming.
that are not
Moby
true
Dick.
for
I'm like,
other
well, this
people.
is-
Yeah.
You have
You
a
just
problem with the
conflated
sea,
religious
my
Well,
friend.
hang on.
Religious
Let me finish,
Religious
Grace. Let me
is
just
not a
finish with a
moral law.
rejoinder. I'm almost done.
Ow.
Destiny would disagree with you because he just got done disagreeing with you. He said only one of these ethical systems can be true, and shouldn't you operate
It's
off
all-
of the
it's
true
all
ethical
enough.
system? Destiny?
Well, 70% of the
But
earth
I'm
has
saying that the
those
law is not an
There you go.
ethical system. It's an
That's not what I
aggregate
asked.
abstraction.
That's not what I asked. dude.
You're asking. Your question is nonsense. Then
How is it nonsense?
There is no aggregate ethical system.
You just said
There's
all
not an
laws are
aggregate-
There is
based in
no
ethics.
Wait,
aggregate
I
ethical
think I
system. What does
understand.
that
I think you
mean?
can bridge the gap. Andrew's not talking about the law at all. He's talking about your personal system of ethics. And the point he's trying
I
to
win,
make is
by
that,
the
like,
way.
hey, well,
I
isn't
win.
that if you believe as a religious person this is the right way to live, then doesn't that have to
And it was
apply to
easy.
people who are
No,
non-religious?
It was
that is
easy.
About moral
expressly-
things, yes.
No,
Moral laws,
no.
yes,
This
yes.
is expressly anti-biblical.
I wish they would stop being so fucking ableist. It's making me so upset. Sorry, serious. Keep in mind, these are bad people, okay? We're not actually on side with anybody here. They all kind of suck. We're just watching them kill each other.
This is not true. There are absolutely
Got her ass
moral
kicked, and so did
requirements
he.
of
They both
Christians
lost
in
bad.
the Bible that is
Because they're
expressly
working
clear that
against each other's
Gentiles are not
interests.
required to do. This is
No,
Destiny
Kyla,
knows
throughout
I'm
the Bible.
right.
Kyla,
You know what I
moral-
mean?
We're not talking about religious laws.
Look at him, he
Moral
knows I'm
laws
right.
Are valid universally. If it's wrong to do something, what makes it wrong to do something, right? It's because it hurts
Make sure you
somebody.
timestamp that,
If
by
it
the
will-
way.
If something will hurt somebody, that's
Total
how we determine
victory,
ethics.
and it was
if
easy.
something will hurt somebody,
no,
it
it's
doesn't
not.
matter which person of which religion is doing it. It's wrong. The Ten Commandments apply to
And of course,
everyone.
she's fucking everything.
It's
There's
okay.
a lot of
Nobody
things
caught
that
it.
are considered
Just
unethical
can't
by
help
religious
herself.
people that don't hurt
Because she's
anybody.
retarded.
That's
I
part of
think
it,
you did it
that's
offhandedly.
Yeah, like I can't, like for instance,
It's
like not
okay.
doing
We've done it
penance for a
before.
sin. That's like that would be wrong. But
I'm pretty sure it's entirely
Never in my
your
life
fault.
of Christian education have I
No,
ever
no,
heard
it's a fucking
fucking moral law.
Somebody
You
from
can
Kraut
sanctify
would
grace of
see
the Catholic.
it's
Yeah.
okay, never mind. It's all good.
I don't know why you keep saying it's a religious
losing
law
it.
when it's not moral. That doesn't make any sense. Our
Your
religious law
loins
is like
like
our
a man
heavenly
and
instructions
answer
of what our
thou.
moral
You
things
could
are.
say you should make
No,
it.
This
no,
is
no, no, no,
sad.
no, not like,
You're
no, no,
gonna
no.
go to hell.
Like,
You're
he's-
gonna
Bartholomew's
sanctify
Job.
grace.
He's trying his
That's
hardest to
fucking
cope for her,
belief.
dude.
Name's
I don't know why you keep
Bartholomew.
saying this. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay, I'll give
What
you
I'm
a
saying,
better
wait,
example.
what I'm saying is that like
It's the
I've
most
never heard in
hilarious
my
thing
entire life
I've ever
Christians saying like,
seen.
wow,
like a Simpsons
this
name.
person like should be doing like penance or should be like usually what they're saying if they're gonna make any moral statement about you, they're saying you should convert. Because the idea that they would follow, like even the idea that you would tell a non-religious person to follow your religious values doesn't make sense. Because why would
Guys, we're
say
free.
convert?
We're free.
I'll-
Wait,
Okay.
wait, hang on. We need to do currency
But-
conversion.
but-
Wait.
hang on.
Currency conversion. It's currency conversion time. Hang on. 50 NZ2 American dollars. It's 30. Oh, we're so close. We're so close. We're not there yet, but we're so close. I saw. Get a green curry and hang on, no truce. Thank you, no truce, for the 50 NZ. I really appreciate that. That's fantastic. We are like, where are we at then? We're at $10 till we can skip to the theory, people. $10, that's all. We're so close. We're so close. I missed another super chat? Which one did I miss? Hang on. Oh, pterodactyl mixed with a T-Rex. T-Rectodactyl. Well, thank you. That's profound. We are $10 away, people. Unfortunately, they were not American dollars, so we're not at 100 yet, but we're at 90. We are so close. So close. I could end this any time, but I would be a terrible businessman if I did. Technically, it's $9. Oh! Insomnoir, thank you for the 10 US dollars. He has liberated us all. Well, surely you are the son of God. Okay. It's over. We've done it. Yay. Alright. No more dredge. We need to pay attention to this. Alas. Quit. Lyceum is saved at 2123. Yeah, sounds good. 2 more freedom dollars, but we're already free. You don't need to give us freedom dollars anymore. It's over. No, don't stop. Wait, give us money. Okay, hang on. I know I'm stupid. Very stupid. All right. Okay. Okay. Kraut.
But that national interest
Not yet.
superseded
Hey,
the
stop. Stop it. Okay. Sorry, I'll stop being cringe. I'm embarrassing the person next to me. The theory bar can go now. We have done it. Wait, we need to make it go up. So, ding, 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 ding. There we go. Now it's gone. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. What's that? You're so hungry? Okay, it's not so awkward. It is, but that's okay. All right. I want to make that full screen. And... Boom. What? What is it? Fuck, I gave up on this debate like an hour and a half ago. Hour and a half ago, and you managed to get me to stay to listen to the Ambrose commentary. Oh, god damn it. I'll never be free. Okay. Ugh. Alright. You're not special. Stop it.
I'm not saying I am. I'm just laughing.
Ugh. Okay. So this is... okay, I'm going to put my earphones. You do not exist. I am focusing. Although if you watch with earphones in, you can also focus here. I've got earphones right here. You can plug them in.
Okay. I can't because I have a MacBook from...
MacBooks have earphone jacks.
Yeah, this one does. This one
Yeah,
does.
they all do.
I know, I just... Okay, alright.
It's a MacBook. It's not an
I
iPhone.
know, I was joking. Oh
No, you
my
weren't.
God, yes, I was.
You were not joking.
Stop it.
Alright, this is Fredda's video, Kraut using liberal political theory instead of history. I don't know what this refers to. I haven't seen this yet. This could mean something I agree with a lot. This could mean something I don't agree with at all. So, 33 minutes. That's about how long it'll take for food to get here. Fantastic. Alright, let's get into it. Except this is going to take me away from 30 minutes because that's how this goes. Shoom.
Except it's 5 minutes delayed. Your actual conversation is going to be so annoying.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
That's fine.
Oh, that sucks.
That
Well,
does.
tough to be you, I guess. Alright, sorry, there's books here. Okay, The Great Leveler, I don't know what that is. Why Nations Fail, a terrible book. I don't know what these are.
This is
The Origins of Political Order. Ah! I have that one. I have it. I've got the pretty hardcover version. Oh. Right here. ASMR. This is actually not bad. I don't like Fukuyama's general rule, but he has some good sources here. You could do worse as like a sort of a survey thing. What's this other one? Economic Origins of Dictatorship and Democracy. I don't know that one, but it's published by Cambridge, so it's probably okay. The Great Leveler. I don't know what this one at the bottom is.
how Kraut opens his video on how Denmark invented social democracy by slamming a stack of books onto his desk that includes Why Nations Fail and The Origins of Political Order. There's a lot of problems with his use of sources when it comes to history, chief of which is that it's almost all political science. We'll talk about that in detail later on in the video.
What's your issue with political science? I mean, I have issues with political science, so I kind of like where he's going with this, but still, what's your issue with political science?
Out of the stack, he pulls The Great Leveler, probably the best book in the stack for a history video, being that it's the only one written by an actual historian. The thesis of The Great Leveler is that periods of long...
I'm not even sure I would count Fukuyama's... Like, Fukuyama is a quote-unquote political scientist, but I wouldn't even count The Origins of Political Order as political science. The Origins of Political Order is basically just a history book. It's just not a very good one. I haven't read this. Walter Scheid something. Violence and the History of Inequality from the Stone Age in the 21st Century. From the Stone Age to the 21st century. As soon as you have periodizations like this, I'm not... There could be a publisher's decision, but that immediately raises red flags. I don't know if I'm going to say it's the best book there, but we'll see.
These lead to growing inequality, which is only erased by periods of great political turmoil, such as the First
Slow up, P.S. This is a fake out? Oh, okay, fine.
World War and the Russian and
Let's slow
Chinese
down.
revolutions. The thesis of her work is the central
Let's
argument.
get out of debate mode and let's watch this carefully. We're going to be slow now. This is now a slow, boring theory video. You're getting what you paid for.
It's the discovery you made during your research. The entire body of work exists to convince the audience that this is the right interpretation of the evidence you surveyed. That's how you work with history. Every good historian, and even writer in general, knows what their thesis is, and is consciously working towards it throughout their work. Usually it's hinted at early on, and then you return to it towards the end of the work in order to hammer it home. However, if you don't know the thesis of your work, you can end up accidentally indicating multiple different theses and themes that you never intended to communicate in the first place. Everything in the video exists to reinforce the thesis. But if your thesis is confused, the messaging of your work is also confused.
And it didn't come to be through class struggle as Marxist theory demands, but through cold weather.
We're going to analyze what Kraut's message is, what sort of thesis is trying to convey with his videos, and how it fits into a larger, somewhat under-communicated ideological project. This video was a lot more challenging to make than some of my past videos where I've talked about figures on the far right. While Kraut was a member of the far-right skeptic community and...
Oh, he did a What If Altis takedown. Oh, I need to watch that. I need to do one.
An anti-feminist and
Like a proper
Islamophobe, he also at times confronted the more extreme right-wing views that he found objectionable. Eventually, this led to a falling out with the more extreme right-wing elements of that community, causing him to distance himself from them. While he's dropped the Islamophobia and general overt gross behavior he used to engage in, he's still as politically engaged as ever on social media and in his videos. He just downplays it in the videos, where most of his attacks on the left, on Marxism or similar things comes as passing remarks or as underlying themes in his video's central thesis. I'll stress this multiple times throughout this video. There is nothing wrong about producing political content, and there is nothing wrong about having an opinion on history. Nowadays, Kraut is center-right, and much of what he says sounds reasonable at a surface level. Everything needs a lot of unpacking in order to understand how he's not really teaching history so much as simultaneously creating an impression of history and wielding that impression to communicate a political message. This video is sponsored by Atlas VPN. The other day I was trying to listen to my favorite rendition of the Star Spangled Banner from a
bless
YouTuber...
him. He actually, like, partitions this so you can just skip right ahead through the ad. That's fantastic. I love this man.
Offer. We're going to examine 2 of his history-oriented videos in order to highlight the ways in which his approach to history, quite frankly, sucks. The first being how Denmark invented social democracy. As you might tell from my accent, I'm Norwegian. I've also done archival research on primary sources regarding the government surveillance of the Social Democrats in Norway and Sweden during the interwar years. We're also going to look at his video called The History of Russian Authoritarianism, which has many glaring problems for a history that is supposed to explain how Russia got to where it is today, chief of which is almost entirely skipping the Soviet era and the
I've actually, Robert stole the television. I've actually covered the What If this video on communism as a religion before. I think I actually did that with Brooks on stream.
1990s, which saw the transformation of the Russian Federative Socialist Republic into the Russian Federation and the creation of the oligarch class. But while there are specific issues, there are also far more general problems that we'll have to address. I spent some time earlier talking about how your thesis can easily get confused if you don't fully know what you're trying to say. This is very apparent in this video. First, listen to this.
Scandinavian communities started to create communal institutions for the wider benefit of their society, run by them and trusted by them earlier than anywhere else. This is an aspect often mischaracterized and misunderstood by outsiders. Infamously, the American far right likes to deride this aspect of Scandinavian society as communism, even though it came into existence centuries before Marx was even born. Equally false, Marxists enjoy describing it as socialism, even though its establishment during medieval feudalism contradicts Marxist theory of history in developmental stages, and it didn't come to be through class struggle as Marxist theory demands, but through cold weather.
Then about 2 minutes after, he says this.
The aristocracy was in theory meant to represent the general public, but in most cases the aristocracy used the parliamentary assemblies to gain power at the expense of the king to then take advantage of the peasantry. As Lutheranism spread among the peasantry and lower nobility, it set them up against the aristocracy and the Catholic bishops. Civil war broke out, and using the support of a Protestant peasantry and lower nobility, Christian III seized the Danish throne in 1536.
This sounds a lot like it involved a struggle between the classes of the aristocracy and the peasantry, with the aristocracy wielding the implements of the state against the peasantry. He claims that, while most of Europe exited feudalism with political conflict between an aristocracy and monarch over the establishment of an absolutist state, Scandinavia exited feudalism with a significantly more empowered peasantry than the rest of Europe. This is an interesting claim considering Scandinavia, just like the rest of Europe, took an absolutist turn during the Age of Enlightenment, and Denmark explicitly disempowered the peasantry in this period. Denmark somewhat uniquely actually instituted a form of serfdom around the rough era that others were abolishing it. In 1733, the king instituted the Stavnsbånd, which required all males aged between 18 and 36 to remain on the estates of their birth and take up tenancies there when required. Landowners resisted reform to the system due to how it might wrest traditional forms of control out of their hands. The first third of the video is about various developments in medieval Scandinavia, which he draws a long and tenuous connection from to modern social democracy. Essentially, he says that due to various factors, our entire culture became more inclusive and collectively minded than other societies. He claims this sort of development occurred in Scandinavia before anywhere else, of course citing zero sources for this claim. The general focus on communal living and mutual aid that Kraut describes in medieval Scandinavia was actually the norm, not the exception, for local communities in the Middle Ages. Peasants in both Scandinavia and elsewhere all varied in wealth and social standing, but all belonged to the same social group. They were the ones who labored, and this laboring class pooled and shared its food and resources for the betterment of the community. There were specific quirks to Scandinavian medieval society for sure, but peasants everywhere made adaptations to deal with seasonal or political troubles, and most of the time these adaptations relied on humanity's biggest strength, our social bonds and capacity for collective effort. Kraut says this developed first in Scandinavia before anywhere else in the world. This is a very specific claim that requires elaboration on what constitutes this sort of development.
This is good.
Because of the specific nature of the claim, one would imagine he read this somewhere, and so it would not be very hard to cite evidence for this. If he did cite it, we could discuss the terms of analysis for what constitutes this sort of development, and whether or not the analysis is good. Maybe the analysis only includes European countries, rendering it Eurocentric and inaccurate. Or maybe Kraut is misusing this source because it doesn't really say what he's claiming it does. We will never know. I don't think he's right on this, but since he was so non-specific about what qualifies as this sort of development, there really is no way to prove or disprove this claim. This lack of specificity, coupled with no source citation, means that there's no way to fully know what he meant. So you can choose to fill in the blanks yourself, meaning that the message can be agreeable to as many people as possible. He's not teaching you history, he's trying to get you to agree with him. This is how politicians speak. A big part of this thesis is that a lot of these lucky developments in Scandinavia enabled us to choose a different path towards egalitarianism than struggle or conflict. However, this is an outright lie. Where we've ended up today is somewhat different from a lot of other countries like the United States, France, or Spain. However, our general long-form path to our destination was more or less the same as the other countries I just mentioned.
While in the rest of Europe, industrialization led to poor houses, strict moral codes, struggles with unions, fear of revolution, Marxist movements and strikes, in Denmark it resulted in a political debate over the Arbejderspørgsmål, the worker question.
There was no shortage of struggle or conflict in Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. He's outright lying here, downplaying the very important part played by unions, strikes, and Marxist movements in the labor struggle for things like welfare, the 8-hour workday, and various other rights afforded to the working class because they fought for them.
Okay, here's where I'll disagree. I don't think he's lying about those details. I think he's lying about having a source for the for his take on those details. So I think he probably read that somewhere. There's one of two things going on. He's either doing the Wedefaltis thing, where he has 2 points and just makes an inference between what would be the shortest path between those 2 points, and then asserts that as the fact, which wouldn't be lying, it would just be stupid. Or he's assimilated someone else's explanation of those events that is incorrect, according to Fredda, because I haven't confirmed this myself, but this seems rigorous so far. He may not be lying, but he is wrong as this person will go into. Yeah, that's true, but that does bear on this, right? Because you can... Here's the catch. Like, you can be wrong because you've been irresponsible. You can also be wrong because you've misinterpreted data, but have done so in a respectable fashion. And you can be wrong at a higher level just because the data is ambiguous. Maybe, like, especially in a lot of, like, prehistory, you have to make a lot of inferences. Is the food here? Yeah, okay. You sure? Okay. So the question is, at what level is the error that Kraut is making? At the level of a lie, he has zero credibility as a human being. Like, he's just out at that point. If it's at the level of stupidity, like he's just uneducated, he doesn't know how to make basic inferences, or he's failing to for whatever reason because he's getting sloppy, you can redeem that a little bit, or at least you can redeem him if he acknowledges this and corrects it and doesn't do it in future, kind of thing. It is not one of those higher level examples, but you see what I mean.
1871 saw a historic wave of strikes across Denmark. In 1872, brickmakers called a strike to reduce the working day from 11 to 10 hours. The Danish government used soldiers and police to attempt to forcefully end the strike, which led to an open brawl, which has since been called the Battle of Falheden. In 1876, the Danish trade unions met in Copenhagen and established a common socialist political program based on the German Gotha program of 1875. In 1885, the employers organized a lockout of all metal workers with the aim of destroying the unions once and for all, for which they hired an army of scabs. In 1898, the Trade Union Congress was formed and was explicitly linked to the Danish Social Democratic Party, with both organizations having representatives on either one's executive committee. The unions and the Social Democratic parties in Scandinavia have since this period always had strong links, to the point of sometimes acting as a single political entity. He goes on to talk about how Danish social welfare initiatives constituted the very first welfare state in the late 1800s.
Okay,
he specifically mentions something similar happening in Germany under Bismarck, and he does refer to it also as a welfare state. But for some reason, even though those things occurred prior to or contemporaneously to the Danish developments, he wants to call Denmark the first welfare state instead. This conflicts with traditional historiography, which would say Germany would be the first example of an early welfare state. He also ignores
what are the books here? I actually want to look at these. Hang on, let's see. Bibliography. Routledge Handbook of Surveillance Studies. Brief History of the Danish Labor Movement. Social Welfare, Mutual Aid Movement. Okay. Okay. Alright.
Same developments occurring in Norway and Sweden, and that those welfare institutions, just like in Denmark, would remain woefully inadequate until at least the 1930s.
Hey, Alejandro.
Denmark, like no other country, is obsessed with statistics.
And the problem is how arrogant he is about his position, zero intellectual humility. Well, that's the thing that makes you, like, prone to, like, high-level errors, right? So, the issue with Kraut that I'm seeing here is it's basically like a higher-level Wedefaltis. Not nearly as bad, but still pretty bad. Like, if it's still leading... It may be a little worse, actually, because people don't take Wedefaltis seriously, generally. He really is just kind of, like, trad vibes, I guess. Watch your step there.
They'll come in waves.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. What is that? Is that miso?
That's miso.
Yes.
There you go.
No, it's not. Stop doxing your hand. So fucking unprofessional. Okay.
And that has its origins in the 1890s. The Danes established state institutions that by their design existed to collect data and go out of their way to find problems for the state to solve, rather than wait for an unknown problem to fester, grow, and become inevitable to confront.
This is such a funny way to frame the construction of the surveillance state. As I mentioned earlier, when I chose to do original
just put down the
research, I
chair
did
there,
so
and
in
I'll
a
grab it in a
field
sec.
called surveillance
Right there.
studies.
Oh,
And in
you're
Scandinavia, the
sitting
field
there.
of
Yes,
surveillance
this one
studies
here.
explicitly links the construction of the welfare state with
I
the
was 100%
construction
gonna
of
get
the
knocked over.
surveillance state. This development
I
took place
will-
everywhere in the
I'll
West,
put it
where
over here.
society was further bureaucratized and more data was collected on its citizens. This coincided with the development of methodical and
ridiculous amount of
systematic
food.
collection of data on citizens for other means, such as national defense or a vaguely defined national interest. In Norway and Sweden, this was quickly weaponized against the left, who were viewed with much suspicion in the interwar years following the Russian Revolution of 1917. We're all obsessed with statistics in Scandinavia, and I'd say in the rest of the world as well. I don't think Kraut is right in characterizing this as a particularly Danish thing. Again, there's no source for Denmark being more obsessed with this than anyone else.
During the interwar period, Denmark then pioneered something new again, this time through the newly developed socialist movement, specifically through a crisis in socialism caused by the First World War. Denmark
Very
remained
talented.
outside of this war, but the way in which industrial workers throughout Europe had cheered for and joined that war, and how socialist parties throughout Europe had joined the cause for war, left the Danish socialist movement dismayed and in an identity crisis. It was proof that there was no such thing as a socialist international, no global workers' movement, but that national interests superseded the social political demands of factory workers in countries.
Once again, a pretty strong claim with zero substantiation, arguing that a difference of opinion or ideological breaks between socialist parties constitutes the non-existence of a fairly substantiated global socialist movement. The inability of the socialist movement to properly confront the reality of World War I in most countries, besides maybe Russia, where the Bolsheviks took a hard...
I want you to remember this when we're out tomorrow and somebody walks up to me with a gun and says "Sic Semper Tyrannis" because they were able to locate us because of your nail paint. That this was you. Oh, was the front of your hands? Oh no, I've doxed you. Your nails are painted. We've narrowed it down.
Stance against the war and won much support from it constitutes a failure of global socialism, but not its non-existence. This was an international movement. What Kraut would have said if he was treating history with respect is that Danish socialists were disillusioned by the experience of World War I, and so chose to abandon the international struggle in favor of focusing on the struggle at home. However, this also grossly oversimplifies the ideological breaks that occurred between the various socialist and social democratic parties in the interwar years, such as the question of revolution versus reform, or the question of whether socialist parties should place themselves under the authority of the so far only quote-unquote successful socialist party in Russia. These were the central axes along which the Russian socialists and Scandinavian socialists came into conflict in the interwar years.
Social policies in Denmark were not the result of class appeasement or state control, but common commitment to stability.
Again, incorrect. Denmark did not uniquely do this out of a common commitment to the common good. Reform in Denmark, like in pretty much every other country, was carried out by the political elites in positions of power. And in the interwar years, this was particularly done as a means of averting possible revolution and securing the legitimacy of the regime. In the book Reforming to Survive by Associate Professor Magnus B. Rasmussen and Professor Carl Henrik...
Siri says, it's funny, this is basically a Ben Shapiro talking point. Shapiro made the exact same point that World War I proves that people aren't actually divided by class. What I'm interested in here is if he's going to make a pivot to the critique of using political theory versus history. That's what I'm waiting for here. Because these are factual clarifications, because Kraut seems, according to this, to be extremely wrong on a lot. My inclination is to agree. I've seen Kraut videos before. My history of socialism in Denmark is non-existent. How's yours? Non-existent? Cool, I can feel good about myself. What I'm interested in is there's a methodological error that he's going to be pointing out here. So let's see.
Knudsen, they explain the reforms of the late 1800s and early 1900s as having only indirectly been accomplished by socialist and social democratic movements, as elites strategically responded to calls for reform in ways that would both shore up support for the regime and alleviate enough of the workers' concerns so as to avert revolt. They argue that countries that most significantly
So the
expanded
second half?
social
Okay, good.
policy were the ones who most significantly
Kinda what I
faced
figured.
revolutionary threats. You should read the book as it, in my opinion, pretty comprehensively debunks this wholesome perspective of cross-class collaboration in favor of the more evidentiary-backed narrative of competing class interests and rights in social policy won through agitation and struggle by social democrats, socialists, liberals, and communists. On the notion of these reforms not happening as a result of state control, I do have to ask, through which mechanisms and institutions were the Danish social policy laws passed, if not through the mechanisms and institutions of the state? And he specifically mentions the expansion of information gathering on Danish citizens as well, which most definitely represented an expansion of state control. Just because the thing the state is doing is good doesn't mean it's not inexplicably an organ of the state. He ends the video by saying that although his videos describe centuries-long developments of institutions, we are not prisoners of history. He laments how many of his audience misunderstand this and end up coming to the opposite conclusion, which for the record is entirely his own fault, and we'll talk about that in a moment. However, I will give him props for attempting to clarify his thesis, saying that we are not prisoners of history and that the establishment of these institutions is possible in other countries as well goes a long way to dispel the notion that the opposite is the case, provided to us by his focus on developments all the way back to the early Middle Ages in Scandinavia. The very final line of narration is, "You can get to Denmark. The question only is, should you?" Which once again confuses his thesis right after clarifying
I
it.
will use a
This video
chopstick,
so
I'm not a
far
barbarian.
looked like a sales pitch for the Nordic model. Never did it seem like a
Probably good
frank or
idea as well.
objective discussion of its merits
I'm
or its
gonna have it all.
issues. I can think of two reasons for him putting this in his video. One, this was the original intent of the video, discussing the merits in more detail, but the nature of the video changed while the final line was kept, because he thought it sounded profound despite there being absolutely zero build-up to it. The other, which I think is equally likely, is that he put this line in here to lend the video a sense of objectivity that it does not deserve. He's essentially framing the video as a purely objective recount of the history of Danish social democracy, despite his very selective retelling of events. Then he's using the question as a rhetorical device to get you to consent to his view of history. By asking this question, he's asking you to nod and say, yes, this sounds pretty good, we should do this. Because he never actually highlighted any of the negatives of Scandinavian social democracy. For one, in the Norwegian example, our sovereign wealth fund is based on a fossil fuel industry that is contributing to a rapidly deteriorating climate situation that will make large swaths of the global south unlivable. While Scandinavian social democracy insulates us from being victimized by some of the harsher sides of capitalism, like having to go into significant debt for an education, for healthcare, and so on, like citizens of other countries have to do, it nonetheless still relies on cheap labor from the very same global south. We have padded ourselves against some of the flaws of capitalism, while still being beneficiaries of its global networks of exploitation of historically exploited nations. This is not to indoctrinate you into a Maoist third worldist perspective on the Nordic countries or anything of the sort. I am of course not a Maoist. I'm trying to present some nuance to this conversation on the system under which I live. Uncritically upholding or reinforcing the present state of things isn't how we move forward. We move forward and improve things by being critical of them and highlighting their issues. Scandinavian social democracy has done amazing things for us here in the Nordics. We are beneficiaries of capitalism's exploitation of countries in Africa, South America, and Asia, just like the US. But citizens of our countries are reaping more of the benefits. That's the difference. That's not to say it's all exploitation. It of course isn't, but there is lots of it. They're both exploitative. If you're American, you're just also getting fucked alongside the farmer who's getting murdered in Madagascar to get you your vanilla extracts. Instead of worshipping what is, let's maybe think more about how we could build something new without these issues. So yes, the question is, should you get to Denmark? If Kraut had a discussion like this, it would have made for a much more intellectually interesting video in my opinion. One in which one could agree or disagree and have a real conversation. The way Kraut works with history is not good, but it'd be far too easy to just say he's being dishonest, which he is for the record. I think that a lot of his issues stem from a core methodological problem. Note, I don't know if what I'm about to say is factual, I'm merely speculating. When you start working with history as an undergraduate, one of the first things you're inundated with is how you approach a topic with a concrete investigation and method in mind. When you start work on a project, you should always have a question or series of questions for the sources that you wish to have answered. These questions will then limit the scope of your video, and they will help shape the work around the thesis, which you should arrive at through your investigation. Kraut's videos meander and visit a lot of topics in order to give you a sort of best-of montage of things he found that he thought were cool or good. I think this is a result of him deciding that he's going to teach you the history of a thing, and that's as far as his plan really went. With this approach, the scope of your video is only limited by the scope of available sources, which means that your video is practically going to be infinitely long. Then, as you begin work, you will select for things that you like or find interesting, not because they are answering the explicit question you have for the sources, but because those things appeal to you. He posted about how a video he's been working on for a while now has ballooned out of control in terms of scope, and this is a characteristic problem stemming from your lack of method when working with history. Trust me, I've had this problem myself when writing my undergraduate thesis and my graduate thesis. But that's not to explain away everything with incompetence. He still made these videos, and although his method led him to mostly focus on things that appeal to him, he himself consciously decided on how to portray those things and what facts to leave out. And so he's not innocent. He still works to glorify those things that appeal to him by selectively telling you aspects of their history that paints them in a very rosy light. He's not trying to teach you about the thing. Specifics aren't very important. They become props and a means to an end.
So here's my prediction, and this I think is the critique that I would make of Kraut, and I think I agree with it generally. Kraut's historical analyses are insufficiently constrained, and so at some point, push comes to shove, and he has to create the essay itself. And to do this, to get from point A to point B, even though he hasn't done the work, because the question he has posed is hopelessly large, he is going to rely on basically a tropified segment of some political theory to bridge the gap, to kind of explain as like what language do I want to use? As like just a generic and replicable and reliably occurring feature of the world that, if given these things, and these happen to be present here, these will cause this in some particular kind of way.
He uses post hoc explanation.
Post hoc explanation, there you go. I don't think that really captures it entirely, but
Fair enough.
but you're also right, yes.
Trying to get you to agree with an idea relating to the thing he's talking about. He's trying to get you to buy into a vibe. Let's move on to Russian authoritarianism.
So crucially here, so buy into a vibe. It makes it sound really sinister. It is, but it's more insidious than sinister. So the need to make the video cogent and coherent, you can interpret that as making you buy into a vibe, because the video itself is going to be a vibe. He's going to need to give you the impression that he has laid the groundwork and he has followed through on the questions that he's posed, and the problems that he's laid out, And if he can't actually do that, if he can't do the work to actually do that properly, he's going to take shortcuts to get there. This is why some of my video essays take like 6 months, because I'll like read a thing and then a bunch of other things around it to get it, and why my questions are usually like pretty tightly constrained, and why if they are tightly constrained, they take forever. So like Truth and State was like a disaster in terms of how long it took, just because finding a way to constrain the question while also satisfying the request was a nightmare.
Viking connection to Danish social democracy, Kraut draws a connection between the Mongols and Russian authoritarianism. This is a theory with some evidentiary backing, but it's specifically a theory used to explain the rise of the Russian Tsardom and its particular brand of despotism, not as a theory to explain the rise of figures like Vladimir Putin. For the video, he cites 5 books. 2 of them are political science, and 3 of them are history books.
Hang on. Origins of political order? I would say that's history, not political science. Why nations fail is bad political science, really bad. History of Russia's history, feudal society, that might actually be political science, then red mark block.
Lord and Peasant in Russia by Jerome Blum was published 62 years ago. Feudal Society by Mark Bloch was published 84 years ago. The book was published before Germany invaded Poland. The final history book was published 61 years ago, but has received constant revision since then, with the most recent edition being released in 2019, I believe. So I'll give him props for that one, I guess. The sources are the evidence a historian uses to formulate their argument. Without them, the historian is nothing. They may as well be making things up. Kraut never explicitly cites the sources, so he really may actually be making things up, but I'm operating on the assumption that he did read some of these things he's claiming. I just believe that his interpretation of these sources is pretty bad. To give an example, he claims this.
The Mongols were a tribal people who had no state or legal structures that they transferred over to the people they conquered.
On page 53 of A History of Russia, which is one of the books Kraut claims to have read for this video, Ryasanovsky and Steinberg says the following. Historians have also documented a wide variety of institutional contributions of Mongol rule, which often persisted into the Muscovite era and beyond. Military weaponry, strategy, and formations, especially the cavalry, structures of administration, taxation, and law, a system of postal stations, and various commercial and financial practices. If you're going to utilize a source that directly contradicts your argument, you need to engage with that source and explain why you're choosing an alternate thesis over it. In this case, choosing the thesis that was formulated before the beginning of the Second World War, or the one formulated in the late 1950s and early 1960s, is probably not the better option.
There's a tendency amongst modern historians to paint the Mongol Empire in a positive light as an institution of trade and tolerance.
I don't know where he's getting this from, but on the very same page of Ryasanovsky's book, the author mentions an example of two recent historians who have posited a view that sounds something like that, and the book mentions arguments for why this sort of thesis is convincing. Either way, I think he has some gall to be talking about tendencies among modern historians when he cites not a single work by a living modern historian or a single work on the historiography of this subject. Again, literally every single historian he cites is dead.
But with the Mongols gone, the newly independent Russia kept the socio-economic and political structures that had developed under Mongol rule, and strengthened them.
Ryasanovsky's book says this is one of the most contentious questions of the impact of Mongol rule, and Kraut here passes this off as one objective true account of a very complicated history with many unsettled questions.
The Kievan Rus, with its deep cultural and economic ties to the Byzantines, had been the cultural motherland and birthplace of Russia. The place where Russia as a European cultural entity had been created. It remained under Mongol rule for 250 years and went into an entirely different direction. When nomads conquered a settled people, they usually turned into who they conquered. But here, in a weird twist, the conquered Russians almost became Mongols.
Frankfurt School theorist Karl Wittfogel posited a thesis of so-called Oriental despotism. Karl Wittfogel as a man alternated politically between Stalinism and seemingly McCarthyism, and in 1957, in his later McCarthyist phase, he published a work called Oriental Despotism. The book sought to explain why certain countries in the East developed differently into despotic regimes as opposed to the liberal developments of the West. The idea draws a harsh demarcation between our Western European way of development and a different quote-unquote Oriental way of development. Although it started a series of conversations that later led to good works, which is a common occurrence, and why even terrible works of history do have some value, the book itself has been widely criticized. In 1961, Frederick Mote, an expert on Chinese history, said that Karl Wittfogel, quote, does not write of Chinese government and society as a historian. The reader does not sense any awareness of the steadily cumulative development through the centuries which gave each age its own character. The reason I use this quote and mention Oriental despotism is that Kraut engages in this exact type of behavior. The Mongols and his conception imparted something non-European, something quote-unquote Oriental onto the Russians, making them no longer like us, and so they developed differently. He's not working like a historian, trying to show the unique character of each age. He's rather compressing everything into a long history of the steady development of a single thing. That
This is good. Yeah, so this is basically where I thought I was going to go with it. So he hasn't done the hard work of actually filling in the particular blanks. And so he's basically using a political theory or a theory of development or something along those lines as a black box to kind of fill in the gap. And then the problem is not that he's getting the history wrong. Well, it is also a problem. The problem is that in reverse, people who view this will then treat the political theory as being valorized. And so that can now be transplanted and used to justify a similar inference elsewhere, perspective or otherwise, and that gets dangerous.
That is, Russian authoritarianism. One can also argue that Kraut's narrative specifically borrows from a Muscovite nationalist mythos intended to justify its own existence and centralization. The narrative of an entirely negative Mongol yoke against which Russia needed to centralize to cast off its oppression was a narrative fronted by Moscow to enhance and legitimize its own power, and it is one that historians generally seek to confront. He goes on to talk about how there was an alternative path in Russia, that of Novgorod, whereby there was a sort of democratic system of government with checks and balances. It is my belief that he overemphasizes the democratic nature of the institution of the Veche by selectively relying on certain source information that mentions elections and similar things. He does this just as he did in the Danish example in order to romanticize and glorify a thing that he likes. In reality, the legislative office often devolved into violent struggles and was likely dominated entirely by the richest merchants and landowners known as the boyars. The leading scholar on the topic refers to Novgorod as a boyar republic, emphasizing elite domination of the Veche and of town officials. Again, this is literally in a book that Kraut lists as a source. The commerce-oriented nature of Novgorod led to an ever-increasing disparity of wealth, leading to conflicts between the rich and the poor, which also occurred in many similar commerce-oriented European city-states. When the Moscow prince in 1478 came to conquer Novgorod, the boyars found no defenders among the common people, who seemingly preferred Ivan III to their own oligarchic governments. If anything, Novgorod and Moscow both reflect elements of Russian political development. I think one could make an interesting parallel between Novgorod and Russia in the 1990s, when the country's industry and institutions were sold off to foreign corporations, leading to the development of an oligarchic class, and how this directly led to Russian people flocking to right-wing strongmen like Vladimir Putin, who presented themselves as someone standing against foreign...
I hate listening to this and knowing that he used Disco Elysium music in the background, because despite this getting 55,000 views, it's now demonetized. It's a damn shame. This is really good.
Foreign domination of Russia. He makes many references to continuities between Tsarist Russia, Soviet Russia, and the Russian Federation, but he never really engages with the continuity breaks in the Russian Revolution and the fall of the USSR. There are perhaps continuities to observe, but there are also continuity breaks, and to continuously emphasize the similarity of the USSR and Tsarist Russia, or the USSR and the Russian Federation, is frankly dishonest, and an effort at propagandizing. It doesn't lead to any understanding of the specific circumstances of each era. It only reinforces a particular narrative that these things are the same and that they are bad. Now, I'm not saying Russia today is by any means good. I think my position on the Russian Federation and figures like Vladimir Putin is pretty clear. What I'm saying is, although Kraut is sometimes levying valid critiques, the way he does so leads to a direct deterioration of your understanding of the unique character of periods of history. But that's not a concern for Kraut, because as I said before, Kraut doesn't want to teach you history. He wants you to buy into a vibe. He wants you to say liberal democracy is good. He wants you to say communism is bad. He wants you to say Russia is bad. He wants you to say free trade is good, and so on and so on. Now, I'm not seeking to take any stance on any of those positions in this video. I'm just saying that if you're going to make propaganda using history, at least make an effort to teach some good history. He fails at this, and this is why I think Kraut's channel is essentially liberal ProgRU. Kraut generally uses a narrow selection of secondary source history books. Secondary sources are, in my opinion, the best thing for YouTube historians to rely on because they can lean on the analysis of experts. Most of his sources, however, are political theory, seeking to...
Let's see. Hang on. I don't know if most of these are political theory. That's, I think my biggest contention with this video so far, I can't really address the trivial, like, facts that he's critiquing because I just don't have the background for that. But I think my biggest complaint would be, there's a thesis in this video, sort of underlying the whole thing, in the title, that Kraut's problem is that he's using political theory instead of history, but I don't see a sharp demarcation between the two, so I want to see some of that. There's not a lot of this video left.
Promote ideal solutions to perceived contemporary problems. They do so, often problematically, by drawing on our collective history. I say problematically because these people are not historians. They're not writing history for us to learn lessons from history that could be applied in the present. They are writing about contemporary policy solutions and moving backwards from there to find examples to test their ideas against. As they do so, they're searching for examples in history that confirm or invalidate their theory, and in doing so they attempt to
Okay. Sorry, I shouldn't be eating while I'm doing this. But, let's see here. Francis Fukuyama expresses some anxiety regarding this in a book Kraut cited, page 24, Origins of Political Order. It's been a hot minute since I've even opened this. Let's see. What I am aiming for in this book, this is Origins of Political Order by Francis Fukuyama, is a middle-range theory that avoids the pitfalls both of excessive abstraction, the vice of economists, and excessive particularism, the problem of many historians and anthropologists. It's not a problem, that's a good thing, actually. I am hoping to recover something of the lost tradition of 19th century historical sociology or comparative anthropology. I do not confront the general reader with a big theoretical framework at the outset, while I engage various theories in the course of the historical chapters. I reserve the more abstract treatment of political development, including definitions of some basic terms, for the last 3 chapters. It's a weird choice. This includes a general account of how political development happens, as well as a discussion of how political development relates to the economic and social dimensions of development. Putting the theory after the history constitutes what I regard as the correct approach to analysis. That's dumb for a couple of reasons. The main one is that you're going to be discussing entities and their relations with each other in advance of justifying those characterizations, and that's going to be the business of political theory. So if you're putting that in the tail end of this, this is, again, like, you're just doing history at that point, which actually should include an analysis of that as well if they're doing it carefully. Like, I object to calling this a work of political theory or political science just because it has political in the title. Like, the political should be something you can write a history of as well as theorize about. Like, a history of philosophy should be able to also be history, not just philosophy. Of course, there's theories ought to be inferred from facts and not the other way around. That is actually absurd, since what is a fact is going to be informed by theoretical paradigms and constraints. Of course, there's no such thing as a pure confrontation with facts devoid of prior theoretical constructs, which completely counteracts the immediately previous sentence. Those who think they are empirical in that fashion are deluding themselves, but all too often social science begins with an elegant theory, then searches for facts that will confirm it. This hopefully is not the approach I take. Am I crazy, or did that sound really dumb?
The problem is it's even worse in abstraction, because basically what he's saying is that theories, facts themselves are developed with bias in mind.
Yeah.
And then they themselves can be analyzed somehow separately from that bias to inform a bias. So he's kind of reasoning circuitously. So what's going on?
He's reasoning more like a pretzel, actually, I think.
Well, it's literally a loop.
Like, but like a loopy loop. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It took a long time.
I know. I was distracting you, though.
Transpose the present onto the past and the past into the present. This can be useful and it can be fun, but it shouldn't be mistaken for history. Using history to understand the present or find solutions in the present isn't a problem in and of itself. It's one of the greatest arguments for the continued study of history. The present is always changing, and so we need to constantly reframe and re-examine history to better understand it and relate it to the developments happening in the present. As these are political theorists and economists working to find or promote existing policy solutions, they're not apolitical actors. They have a very specific political agenda, and a very specific political...
Okay, but historians do too. That's not fair. Like, I've known academic historians who are, like, radical anti-Marxists, for example. Just because they aren't working for the State Department doesn't mean they aren't, like, heavily politically involved. And just because they are working for the State Department does not mean that their work is therefore hopelessly fraught. It most likely is, but that's not a guarantee.
Vision for the world, which they're pushing, and Kraut has chosen these specific political sources because they align with his political agenda and vision for the world. To give an example, fundamentally using The Origins of Political Order by Francis Fukuyama, a proponent of a specific brand of liberalism, who wrote this book to promote that brand of liberalism, is not much different than using Vladimir Lenin's Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism, as a source for history. Francis Fukuyama and Vladimir Lenin...
No, it is, though. It's pretty different, actually. For one, Lenin invokes historical material, specifically stuff like Engels' Origins of the Family, Private Property in the State. He is not himself giving an historical account. He's simply leveraging historical accounts to make his argument. Fukuyama is doing history. He's also doing theory, but he's primarily doing history. This is primarily a historical approach. It can be one that is theoretically fraught, it can be ideologically slanted, it can be cynically motivated, but it's still history.
Must both be understood as having dual roles, as political philosophers, but also as political actors in their contemporary setting. Fukuyama's general political project revolves around elevating capitalism and liberal democracy as humanity's greatest political achievements, and it is his belief that this is essentially the final phase of history. Fukuyama holds that the world is becoming Western. In his view, we figured out
Okay. I'll do this later.
The right way to do things before
Significantly.
others because our institutions developed in certain ways, whereas others developed in other ways. According to this view, society has a developmental path, and on that path reaches critical junctures. Its goal is to become quote-unquote Western, but some nations end up going down the wrong path.
God, okay. Fredda, you need an editor, dear God.
Paths for various reasons, and become viewed as backward for failing to reach Westernization. You can detect how
Yeah.
Fukuyama
The hint that Fukuyama isn't making like a simple democratic liberal triumphantist screed, and he's actually become a lot more conservative recently. Surprise, surprise. Is that he's using the language of the last man. The end of history and the last man. The last man is not good, okay? That's a Nietzschean reference. He's talking about the person who is conditioned by this endless, crystallized, meek, sort of neuter, servile sheep man thing. That's not a grammar spelling mistake, Sunday. It's political. Look, it should have a Y there. It's a spelling mistake. It's a typo. What are you referring to?
and other liberal theorists'
Oh, wait, yeah. Yeah, you doubted me. Unbelievable.
have suffused Kraut's approach to and thinking regarding history, just like I have been influenced by other theorists. He wields history in order to communicate some of the vague vibes that he found within the works of these theorists that he identified with. I say vague vibes because while he relies heavily on theory, he rarely engages with it, just as he rarely engages with sources in general. I kind of do the same thing, but I hope the difference between me and him is that I tend to depend on literature from the field of history, and I engage with it and discuss its merits and flaws. And I also try to do my best to never peddle falsehoods or inaccuracies, even if I, like everyone else on this web.
I think this video is better than Kraut's. It's a good critique overall. I think the beginning of this, where he's going over the facts of the matter and pointing out the sloppiness, is good. I think he's missed the mark here, though, in that the critique isn't that Kraut's using political theory instead of history. Kraut is using history. The problem is that he's treating a highly politically fraught author's account, who is not an area specialist, as if his declarations are simply authoritative. And you need to be able to justify why you're using this particular source and why this particular source as opposed to another one, especially if you're trying to make a statement that is not intuitive to your audience and also is something that you're going to say is more correct than like the general narrative. It's important to justify this account as opposed to this account. Since he's wrong, that makes it worse. It's now not just bad form, that now becomes sort of like a sin against the discipline he's writing towards. But it's not clear to me that The Origins of Political Order is not a history book. It's pretty eminently a history book. It's just not a good one. And it being a history book doesn't mean that it's not politically slanted. It doesn't mean it's not methodologically fraught. And it doesn't mean it's not political theory is a really crucial point.
Website show you something from history in order to support a narrative or argument, which is the style that history is written in, after all. The
nature of history is something written through interpretation, is that there is no true single idea of what is real objectivity. Okay.
I'm showing you is true. That's why I cite my evidence down to the page number.
Yeah, exactly, Daedalus. The issue is a matter of methodology, not subject, or the lack of methodology categorically, because he doesn't seem to actually have a method that he ascribes to, because the point to a method is that there is a particular set of practices you engage in to achieve an optimal result. If he's just picking and choosing when to engage in some methodological approach, then there isn't really a methodology guiding his analysis, and he is literally just making it up as he goes, just in a really convoluted and unnecessarily busy way.
So you can verify it. Kraut, of course, does not do this, and this is a problem because he makes no shortage of controversial, sweeping claims. Citing sources correctly isn't about slavishly adhering to some academic standard for the sake of. It's about centering the knowledge and the sources in a truthful manner that invites critique, and not centering yourself as an arbiter of some objective truth. When you show your work by citing sources, you're saying, if you think I'm wrong, this is how you prove it. When you don't cite sources, you're implying that the knowledge that you're presenting represents some sort of established truth, and that this established truth does not warrant critique. week. Kraut rarely has a strong thesis, but instead various themes and vibes he wants to communicate. Various abstract ideas that he wants you to buy into. These things rarely are communicated specifically and with real factual substance, but instead as subtext within the subjects he's discussing. He will distort an event, period, or polity's history in order to emphasize vague aspects of it that he likes. The point of the video is to get you to buy into those things. His lack of specificity and the diffuse nature of his thesis seems tailored to be acceptable to as many people as possible, with vague positive vibes being the central characteristic of his videos. His videos seem to always have heroes for you to attach your political identity to, and villains for you to revile. It's brilliant propaganda. And again, I wouldn't be upset if he was simultaneously using history appropriately and making the knowledge of his sources more accessible to viewers. But he isn't. He's mostly just doing the propaganda part. His sources are never cited explicitly, but that's par for the course with YouTube history. Though the fact that I managed to find multiple instances of him outright contradicting one of his most authoritative sources in a single video makes me feel like he is disinterested in making the knowledge of the sources themselves accessible to the viewer, and instead he's using them as props. What pisses me off is the smugness and self-assuredness with which he does all of these things that I've criticized him of. He's presenting his single view of history as objective. He's obfuscating the historical debates and complexities of history. He's centering himself as an educator, instead of the sources on which he's supposed to be relying on. He shows little respect for the work of historians, and for history itself. And that is why Kraut is a bad historian.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Shoot, my video's gonna be demonetized too. Damn, I just realized, because same music. So, I like this video, but it doesn't carry out what it sort of implies it's going to be carrying out by the title. It doesn't actually critique, it doesn't successfully critique Kraut for using political theory in place of history. It relies upon sort of an equivocation between political theory and quote-unquote history involving politics or being written by people who are politically interested, which is a mistake. So a lot of really good history is politically interested and is written by political theorists and involves political theory or digressions into political theory, or will spend time talking about the composition of things, da-da-da-da-da. These aren't like really firmly separate. It's only when you're like in the totally abstract, like you're dealing with someone like Hobbes and you're not dealing with any particular instance as sort of like your primary focus, that you end up purely in the realm of political philosophy or political theory. It's good though. I'm going to cut it here, and because I'm cutting this segment a little bit short, I'm going to do pure theory for the next stream to make up for it, so we won't have the bar for next time. But I'm going to send you to another channel, and I will see you all pretty soon. Let's see here. Oh, is that live? Hang on, let's see. Where do I want to send you? Let's see here. Oh, that's still coming somehow. I don't know what that means, but I'll send you to them, and we'll see how that goes. All right, just tell Daedalus hi for me if he's actually running. Stream tomorrow? Probably not, but the day after, yes. All right, have a good night.